What a privilege to be the first to speak in this room in Cape Town. Wow. Coming from West Africa, it's lovely. My name is Jean-Pierre Ngessan. I'm a program manager at EDCTP. EDCTP is a research institute founded by one of our eminent professors, Professor Suleiman Boub, himself in this room. And we're very happy. He is also the coordinator of WANITAM. And WANITAM is part of 4 nodes of excellence, which are starting from Central Africa, CANTAM, Central African Network for TB, AIDS, and Malaria. We have EACCR, Eastern African Network for Clinical Trials. We have TESA, also in Southern Africa, and West African Network is WANITAM. So we are all gathered here owing to the Global Health Network. And you know that we have 17 goals in the SDGs, and the 17th one is, if you know, partnership. So partnership means a lot, because John Maxwell said, one is too little a number to achieve greatness. So if you want to achieve greatness, you have to work together. And it is a great pleasure to be here today to really exchange ideas. And I would like to call Professor Boub to give us a brief presentation, only 3 slides. He can say it, without even looking at the slides, but he will just present the stakes of research in West Africa and tell us how the networks were established. So I want to call Professor Boub. So our technician there, if you are ready, then put the first presentation called Introduction New. And after Professor Boub, we'll call Trudie for her presentation. So I want to call Professor Boub here to give a few words about the stakes of research in West Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, not only West Africa. I'm so focused on West Africa that I keep saying West Africa, and then present the networks of excellence. So if you are ready, please.
Okay, so just good morning, everybody. I'm pleased to be here today. And having been one of the pioneers of this EDCTP and also Network of Excellence, I'm very pleased to be here today. And as we all know, there is many issues regarding development of research in Africa due to poor investment in research, because most of the funding mainly is coming from donors and from developed countries. The poor facilities and research policies, except some really centers, most of the situation, as you can see, is not on the best way. The most importantly is the lack of synergies among different researchers. And this is the reason why the network of excellence have been created. Historically, when EDCTP was launched, there was the first call. When we realized the first call, most of the grant went to Southern Africa and mostly in South Africa. And there was 2 main governing boards in EDCTP, what we call the partnership board, which was equal partners from developed country and developing countries, and what we called at that time the DCC, Developing Country Clinical Trial Partnership, which is the African part of this governance body. We suggested the idea to strengthen the capacity and give some balance to create the different network of excellence in the 4 parts of Africa, West, East, and South. And this is how the different network of excellence have been created, and mostly for the synergy of collaboration and partnership. And one of the different issue is the issue regarding the brain drain. We were discussing that some minutes ago regarding the possibility for many people to be trained, but didn't stay for many other reasons. Among those are the reasons why having the EDCTP, the partnership board, but the network excellence was a great idea by this group, mainly at that time called DCC, Developing Country Clinical Trial Partnership. Next slide, please. Okay, I think this is mainly the history we can give. Maybe, Jean-Pierre, I think it will be enough because I don't want to value more one item. I will leave it to you. I wanted just to insist on the fact that when those network was created and now, I think a lot of progress have been made. And what is mostly important is people of my generation now, really, I think we have trained so many people that, as I mentioned, I think the next generation is now taking over, and that's the most important. And more, I think, really, we will need to have together this collaboration among the different networks in order really to fulfill the different criteria. Yeah, this is over. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you, Prof. Before passing the word, the micro to Trudie, would you please press it again, once again, 111, and then yeah. So what Prof said is there. So when they made the decision, the EU, again, you press please. The EU through EDCTP, yeah, go on pressing, don't worry. Yeah, okay, stop there. Well, so the EU through EDCTP established 4 nodes of excellence, which are, as I said, CANTAM, EACCR, TESA, and one item. You press it twice again. Yeah, so one item is West Africa, but we are here to, present all the networks. So the main objective of EDCTP, as you can see, is to, support, clinical trials for our site to conduct clinical trials, respecting international standards. So we are really happy again to be here together to exchange ideas, to move forward, helping each other fulfill our goals. Thank you also very much, and we wish you a very prosperous symposium. Trudie, the floor is all yours.
We have the lights up. Which one is
It's right here.
The next one.
But I can't have you all falling asleep now. Well, this is such a special meeting because this is the first meeting of the Symposia for the Global Health Network Conference. And do you know what? It couldn't be more appropriate because 2009, we were in Uganda. Pontiano will be here tomorrow with Mboop and my friends, as I say, the old youngsters. So the idea of this symposia is to bring together the networks of excellence, see how far we've come in all of these years, and then look forward. And it's obviously a meeting as well around deltas, which you'll hear around a lot this morning. But the whole thing is about connecting up. So back in those days, we were getting together on malaria, TB, and HIV to say, okay, there's these amazing centers of excellence across Africa who are doing absolutely state-of-the-art trials, which we were doing at the time. We were doing the RTSS vaccine, we were doing the malaria drug trials, we were setting up all those sites for the HIV vaccines that didn't happen. And there was these amazing expertise and skills. And we talked about sister sites, that you could be in the same hospital and you could walk across to orthopedics or pediatrics, and there was no capacity. And so how could we share that capacity out within the hospitals, within the countries and in the regions? And that's where the EDCTP networks of excellence came. And then actually, that was exactly, we'll hear more about this tomorrow, but that is exactly where the Global Health Network came from. It was those early discussions we all had around sharing across diseases and across between sites of experience like osmosis and low experience. So where are we shifting from now? This is what we're going to talk about today. How do we take what we've established and having these very powerful networks of excellence, true networks of excellence, how do we move that forward? And what is that going to look like with the next evolution of EDCTP itself, and where does it fit? Michelle's going to talk to more about that, I'm sure. I think for me, it's the best way to start off this conference, because bringing together Deltas and the opportunities for career development, really focusing on that structures, is just what this whole next 3 days is all around. What I want to say really is about the opportunity that we have over the next few days together. There's all these symposia running today to focus down on these particular topics. And so that's your opportunity this morning with the networks of excellence and Deltas to think about what have you learned. And, I wrote some notes, and then I stood here and looking with, there's my colleagues from Brazil, Bangladesh, Nepal. Mahesh, welcome. And how amazing is this? We've gathered here to talk about the African networks of excellence, and we have our colleagues around the globe. And that's the point. So, we had these symposia to focus on where have we come from with the networks of excellence? Where do we take it next? And then how do we connect globally and make sure that we can really, spread that knowledge and information across the global south. So let's make sure we don't waste this opportunity we have. What are the outputs today? What are you going to do from today? What's going to be taken back to the team in Senegal, to Uganda, we'll talk about Tessa and some plans for Mozambique, which is super exciting. We have one very particular opportunity I want to call out. PLOS Global Public Health are going to run a special collection on this conference, and that's really exciting. So what I challenge you all to do, and I had somebody nominated as rapporteur earlier, Santa. I think it's what we're trying to say for every symposium, every session, is to pull out the recommendations. What needs to be done next? What has worked well? What would you take forward? Maybe especially in this context, what could the networks of excellence teach other networks that are being set up across the globe? What can the networks of excellence do better moving forward? We started off just doing those 3 diseases. Now it's spread more, and we're working on the neglected tropical diseases too. There's all the opportunities with data science, pathogen genomics is a big topic. There's all these different things you could take forward. Sam's amazing work with Deltas and the training programs. I really challenge you to come up with some really precise outcomes and get those written up and put that in as a paper for the PLOS collection, because I think the networks of excellence have been such an achievement. Where's Michelle? We talk for ages, don't we, about, it's just the hardest thing to do is to get around to write these things up, but it's a nice opportunity for somebody to author those papers. And we've got some help in the Global Health Network team to try and do some editorial work and things. So thank you, everybody. Thanks for your work setting up this meeting, to all the team. Thank you, everybody, for coming to this symposia today, especially our colleagues from outside Africa. Wave everybody who's not from Africa. Look at that. I know. It's exciting, isn't it? So that's what it's all about. So brilliant. So enjoy the session. I've got to go to the AMR one now. So yeah, you're in charge here. But enjoy, and I look forward to seeing all the outputs and hearing all about it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. I will continue from here. I am Leonard from CANTAM, Cameroon. I collaborate with CANTAM, Alert, and the Global Health Network. So it's been a challenge to bring the team together. And that's one of our objectives for the network, to kind of bring Africans together, unite the team. So we thank Michelle. Michelle has been like our bonding factor, the push. So Michelle, you have the floor.
Thank you, Leonard. Thank you, Trudie. She's unfortunately left. Good morning, everyone. It's quite encouraging to see the turnout. I was actually asking Leonard, so how many people have registered? What are we expecting? So it's good to see that we're almost 99% capacity. Welcome to participants from other parts of, or rather outside Africa. So my name is Michelle Nderu. I'm EDCTP Project Officer, and I've been responsible for the Networks of Excellence since 2013. So it's been very many years that we've worked together. So the Networks of Excellence were established in 2009, and that's because we actually noticed that clinical research across sub-Saharan Africa, when you looked at the capacity, it was quite uneven. We had some institutions that were quite established and some institutions that were less established. So what we decided in 2007 is to launch a call that would bring together institutions that were based in different regions, more or less, most of the 4 regions within sub-Saharan Africa, that's Central Africa, West Africa, Southern Africa, and East Africa. We mandated these institutions to come together, the strong and weak institutions, so that they could learn from each other and exchange the expertise. We noticed that most of the researchers in sub-Saharan Africa were working in silos. There was lack of sharing of expertise and resources. There was no mapping when it came to, just trying to figure out what's happening on the ground. And also most of the collaborations, what we realized is that most of the collaborations followed historical links. So this sidelined a lot of sites and researchers. So capacity building is not a sprint, it's a marathon. The Networks of Excellence have been running this marathon for about 10 plus years. And I'm happy that we're starting to see the fruits of our efforts and the labor. It's been a journey. So I'm glad that we have them here, and they will touch on the lessons learned, some of the outputs and the outcomes, and also start thinking about how we're going to translate some of these outputs and outcomes into impact. Because at the end of the day, we need to find out how much of what we have put in is translated into impact on the ground. Thank you. So we'll go to the chair. All right, so I have been tasked to chair the session of the Networks of Excellence. It's an honor. Thank you, Leonard. So the Networks of Excellence are going to present on the research capacity strengthening case studies. They are going to present a brief outline of the networks, examples of the outputs, key enablers and challenges, and key lessons learned. So it's going to be 12 minutes for each presentation, followed by 3 minutes Q&A. But what I propose is that we hold our questions until after all the presentations, and then we'll open the floor to the questions. So I will call upon the engineer, the man behind WANETAM, together with Professor Mboup, to provide his presentation on WANETAM. Welcome, Jean-Pierre.
Thank you again, and I'm really happy to be here and to speak about WANETAM. So I'm going to keep my 12 minutes. So if it is 12 minutes, tell me, and I'm not done, please remind me. Yeah. So, okay. So you also have to play your role so that, we can fit in the time. Next slide, please. Yeah, okay. I wish I could handle my slides myself, because when I prepare slides, there is a complicity between the two of us. Yeah. This one? Yeah. So I press it here. Voila. Wonderful. That works. So the outlines, I will quickly talk to you about the SDGs and the research ecosystem, and then give a quick overview of the challenges facing research in sub-Saharan Africa. Prof. Mboup has done it already, so I saved 2 minutes. Brief history of WANETAM. This is also done by Michelle. The objectives of WANETAM, key achievement, challenges, and of course, sustainability and way forward. Well, so as I keep saying every time in every meetings, we are all in one world, and we ask a question, who is coming from out of Africa? We saw many hands. So we are all living in one world, so we face the same global challenges. So we must all endeavor to do something to keep our, to live a healthy life and keep the planet in good condition. And research is a solution. And the more we do collaborative research, the better. So Prof has presented a stake of research already. Most of the time people, our money comes from donors. We work in silo, infrastructures are poor, and our young guys, whenever they go to the US or Canada or France or wherever, and they get opportunities, they stay there because they say, in Africa, conditions are not good. And we have to stop this. So one day, somebody had a dream, Michelle said it, and this dream, people discussed together with EDCTP, and they, gave birth to 4 children or daughters across Africa, Central, Eastern, Southern, and Western Africa to support clinical trials so that, researchers in Africa can produce good research, following international standards to produce good impact that will be transformed into tangible impact. So when CANTAM was established in 2009, we started with 14 partners from 7 countries. Then we grew to reach 20 institutions from, Europe and Africa as well. And now we are CANTAM 3. The network has grown bigger. Don't mind the shape. We'll talk more about the content, but the shape can help the content as well. So our general objective is to build regional, national, institutional, and individual capacities to be able to conduct good clinical trials. And the specific objectives, we want to strengthen collaboration and optimize the use of resources and infrastructure within the network, like clinical labs, biobanks, data centers, etc. We want to promote professional development, in all the aspects of the research ecosystem. We also want to strengthen South-South and North-South collaboration to be able to really, do research together, joint grant, etc., and encourage and promote networking and dialogue between researchers, communities, and policymakers to maximize the impact of clinical research in Africa. So how are we structured? We have 7 work packages. We have TB, malaria, HIV, NTDs, emerging and re-emerging infection and COVID, and training and support, and project management and advocacy. So far, what have we been able to do? Our achievements, the main one. So we want to really give a sort of summary of what we've achieved, taking into account, the KPIs established by the EDCTP, mainly partnership, expertise and training, infrastructure, networking, organizational management, and how we plan to sustain our network. This is very important. So in terms of partnership, we are happy that CANTAM is a successful network. CANTAM is now recognized as, a collaborative research platform, bringing together English-speaking, French-speaking, and Portuguese-speaking countries in West Africa. CANTAM is attracting people more and more. We keep receiving letters from university institutions, research institutions who want to become member. And CANTAM is now a discipline-specific partnership for collaborative research as joint grant funding attraction for research activities are becoming possible. We have the example of the pediatric network within CANTAM, which is really very successful. Also, we have a strong collaboration during the COVID pandemic. This one was amazing because COVID alone brought about more than 8 publications in a very short period. We have joint grant application, several. Some have been successful, others have not been successful, but at least we've tried. And a strong partnership with West African Research and Innovation Management Association, because today, if we want our research to generate impact, we must manage all the aspects of the research ecosystem. And we have to work with the Research Management Association to really improve our governance, the way we manage research, because it has been one of the challenges we've been facing so far. One person alone cannot be researcher, project manager, and everything. We need expert also to manage research. And we've seen through the example of the US, Europe, and even Sarima in South Africa, that having a strong research management system helps, generate impact of research. Because most of the time we stop at the level of output and we don't even know we've trained 100%. So what? Do you follow? Once EDCTP funds is exhausted, we forget what we've done. And this is why this data sharing thing is very important, because your data will not die in your drawers. Your sample will not die in your biobank. Somebody else can use them and continue the work. That's why we want to manage research, all the aspects of the research ecosystem. Partnership. Yeah, like we have these two successful joint projects also as a part of our partnership activities. And as I said, more than 30 peer-reviewed publications, and specifically the COVID-19 collaboration has generated a lot of papers. So in terms of training, these are the key figures, 568 specific training. And as you can see, we have it shared by work package, by gender. We are struggling. Before we were about 65, 35% in terms of gender balance. Now we are trying to take this aspect into account to really give the chance to all the partners, male and female, to really benefit from the training. So we are improving, and now we are like 59-41% in terms of gender balance. So more specifically, we've supported masters, PhDs, and postdocs. These ones are very expensive, so we cannot have a great figure because we are many. So it is difficult to really support many. That's why we are happy with the talent project, which is really an opportunity for ladies to conduct, to pursue their studies at PhD level. So now we have initially 5 students, and now we have 8, and we thank EDCTP for this talent project. These two, young persons are part of the TB network. We're proud of them because they are doing a great job with Dr. Toyin Togun, who is their mentor. Well, expertise and training also. We have the CHMI study in the MRC. We also have 3 certified clinical trial monitors out of 5 trained. We have 2 recognized research managers by the IPRC. The IPRC is International Professional Council, which manages research management in Africa. We have 2 certified monitoring and evaluation experts. And somehow we are proud of some of our results because these are a bit peculiar. Like Professor Halimatu, Makta Kamara, the 2 from Senegal, Al Mustafa from Mali, Sophia from Nigeria, and Huriratu from Burkina Faso benefited from, EDCTP money to do high-level training, and this was very helpful. The first 3 are full professors at their universities in Dakar and Mali. Sophia is still young, but owing to the training, she's also, playing a key role in her country. And we have recently what we call CAMES, new professors. Mustafa Mbo, proud of him personally, because the first time Michelle sent me a mail, EDCTP fellowship, and I called Mustafa. I said, Mustafa, apply and you get it. He went to see Prof. Prof said, go and get help by Badara. He won it and he was so happy. And recently Mustafa became full professor. So these are tangible results. And we have Awaba, who is also a postdoc fellow in the TB network on the left. So we are proud of these people. Again, I was talking about research management. WARIMA is the West African Research and Innovation Management Association. WANITAM, it is not a coup d'etat. It is, WANITAM has taken 3 roles. We have this gentleman there, Dembo Kante, who is the president of WARIMA, myself, public relations officer, because I say I talk too much. Elizabeth is our financial manager, and yeah, okay, you say 1 minute. And then this Ghanaian lady, my friend, who is part of, so in terms of infrastructure, we have 10 certified auditors, 2 lab accreditations, new standards, as you can see. So, and we have strong institution, MRC, Nanoro, MRCG Bamako, GRAS Burkina Faso, NIMA, and IRASEP. So these are very strong institutions which can really support the network beyond in the future. Networking, we have good tie with the Ministry of Health, ECOWAS through World Health Organization. Stop. Okay. So 1 minute and I'm done. Of course, Global Health Network, WARIMA, and we need more networking. Organization, we have our management board, the steering committee, and the General Assembly, and of course, our partners, EDCTP and external stakeholders. A few challenges quickly. If EDCTP is not there, no money. Communication and dissemination is still a bit below expectation. Language barrier, of course, because most of us are French-speaking people. Low commitment of a few partners, and the networking is still low. So we want to struggle hard to plan through a business plan, do more fundraising, and also define clear legal status for one time in the future. Maybe we should become a legal entity to really sustain our network. So thank you all. And I want to thank my friends, those who are there. Michelle, you are behind. We don't see you, but you are here. So let me end by this. One is too small a number to achieve greatness. No accomplishment of real value has ever been achieved by a human being working alone. This is from John Maxwell. So thank you all so very much. So I owe you 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Jean-Pierre. I will call on Rodriguez Macheve, the project manager from TESA. He's also the engine behind the TESA network. That's the network that covers Southern Africa. Welcome.
So I'm the project, my name is Rodriguez Macheve. I'm the project manager for the TESA network. So we are coordinating the network of excellence in Southern Africa. So this is my presentation plan. I will speak about some achievement in key indicators that we have already achieved, and followed on the process observed by the evaluation, and then I will end up with the specific action on monitoring process corrective actions. Okay. Yes, I will not repeat again about this one. So as you know, we have started from the first program of EDCTP, where when the network of excellence was launched, we constituted a consortia in 2019, and then we moved for the second round through the EDCTP 2, and then now we are currently in the third phase of granting funding. So as you know, this CP3 now we have a new regulation. So now we're starting and advocating some side to be membership to the EDCTP. Okay, thank you. So in terms of scope management, basically we have 3 areas that we are covering. So the first one is the infrastructure development, where we are focused on laboratory accreditation and equipment upgrading. So we try to strengthen the less developed sites to enable them to carry out the high quality clinical trials. And the second area, we commit to the training and mentorship. So we used to develop the short-term training and and training in cross-cutting discipline. So the last scope, it comes to the resource sharing and automation the resource to enable the ultimate use of resource and infrastructure within the network. Next slide. Next, please. So this is the participating country and institution. As you can know, we are 15 organization, where 3 it's European. Next slide, please. So this is the main objective. So as you can see on the left, so this was the first grant funding from EDCTP, and then we moved to TESA 3, where we try to benefit from the achievement that we made in the last grant. Next slide, please. So this is the corporate governance from the consortium. As you can see on the left, we have Dr. Saud, he is a project leader, and we have a General Assembly, and the decision board, which is steering committee. Down there, we have 4 work package leader. The first one is dealing with the consortium management of TESA. The second one is led by Professor Dondeh from University of Cape Town. He's leader in the capacity building for clinical trial. And the third one is led by the Professor Copeland from Amsterdam, who is leading the data management and sharing and analysis. So the last one, we try to bring the impact of all the achievement that we met, and communication and policy dialogue. So as you can see, we have 3 levels of strategy. So the first one is dealing with the body meetings. The second one is coordination level, and the last one is the operational one. Next slide, please. So this is the consortium steering committee member. As you can see the face, this is a member of the consortium. So I will not go in detail on this. As you can see down there, we have a specific group, this is not leader, who are acting as an independent institution to attract more funds for our sustainability. So down there, you can see myself, I'm coordinating, I'm managing the consortium. Next slide, please. So we have tasked to come here and share the experience of implementing various theories of change for research capacity building among the STP regional network assets. So this is our main goals that we have today. Next slide, please. So in the next slide, I will present our achievements. Next, please. So in terms of network management, so we optimizing the use of resources within us. We enable the less developed sites to engage by promoting the training using the principle of hands-on, and we're promoting a South-South and North-South collaboration. And we also now design the term of reference, looking to the General Assembly. As we know, we have 3 main boards: the General Assembly, Steering Committee, and the Scientific Advisor Committee meeting. So in this grant, now we are trying to bring together the SOP, the procedure, just to rule this body. So in terms of key performance indicator, so we have moved a lot. So I will show in the coming slide. Next slide, please. So this is the reference lab that we have accredited within the consortium. So we try to use this as a platform for training for the junior and scientists within the network. So the first one is the reference lab from the Stellenbosch University. Second one is with the HIV at BSP Botswana, and the third one is malaria in Mozambique, plus data management training. So this will constitute the regional asset for John Clinical Trial, while we ensure access for the left development sites. So this will be used as a platform to enable the junior scientists to learn by doing, and will benefit for the full spectrum of opportunity in terms of clinical trial running at the UCT Stellenbosch at Botswana. Next slide, please. So this is a certificate of recognition of those 3 reference labs that I have mentioned. Next slide. So in terms of achievements, so as you can see, we have already published more than 45 manuscripts during the grant periods. Next slide, please. In terms of site visit and advocacy meetings, we initiate this visit Stellenbosch, University of Cape Town, Namibia, Botswana, and CISA. We're planning to visit some sites, so we try to advocate the participating country to be part as a membership. As you know, there is a new regulation. If you're not part of the EDCP now, as a membership, you will not be able to be funded. So we now, as a coordinator, we try to advocate our partners to apply for this new regulation. Next slide, please. So this is one of our site visits at EDCP office. Next slide. We were in Zimbabwe for the standing committee meeting, and we visited the Minister of Health in Namibia as well. Next slide, please. So in terms of success stories, member staff are now becoming PIs. We have some junior scientists now are becoming PI, for example, at Zambia, Dr. Shanda now is leading a national study of COVID-19 patient categorization. We are proud to announce that Dr. Sikolili Moyo from BHP, he has been awarded the Martin Luther King Jr. Humanitarian Award. So as you know, he discovered the genomic sequence of COVID-19 Omicron at Botswana. Next slide, please. So this is another our achievements. We have sponsored 9-month students, 4 PhD, and we have now enrolled 4 PhD, 1 postdoc, 4 master students. In terms of gender balance, we are 55 males and 44 females. More than 30 training short courses have been conducted. We benefit that it's benefit for more than 8 members within the network. Next slide, please. So last week we were in Angola, where we hosted a General Assembly. We have a successful meeting, but this one was we have initiated by the scientific session. We have been presented by the Premier Secretary of Angola. It was a fruitful meeting. Next slide, please. So this is another grant that we have that is sponsor a female to pursue a PhD grant. So as you can see here, now we have 6 student female. That's to try to addressing gender and diversity regional gap in clinical research. Next slide, please. So in terms of our visibility and sustainability, so we are now committed to develop a strategic business plan for the next 10 years. And we are trying to use those reference labs as a platform for promoting job and training. Next slide, please. In terms of challenge, I will not repeat what Jean-Pierre said. The language barrier is still a problem. We have started late due to COVID. So we're now committed with the collaboration also. So we need more regular meetings like this. So that's our suggestion. Next slide, please. So I want to hand just to share with you the video, which is 3 seconds, and say thank you, please. Yeah, you can leave it. Yeah, let's press next slide, please.
Thank you, Rodriguez. I'll call upon Leonard, who's the project manager for CANTAM. That's the Central African Network.
Okay, thank you once more. So I'm actually going to do same like all the other networks. Okay, so the outline is going to be as does achievement of phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, progress and key enablers, challenges and lesson learned. Okay, so actually I don't need to go into this again, but it was realized that Central Africa, it was considered the black corridor. If you look keenly, West Africa, East Africa, South Africa, always beyond. And it's look keenly also that mostly related to the French speaking, the English speaking. So the French speaking zone was actually really behind every aspect of research. So this network of excellence came in to fill the gap. So the first phase was actually to develop infrastructures, because at that phase, everything was still not existent. No research project could be established in Central Africa because we didn't have the infrastructures, because we didn't have the expertise. So everything was going to the east, west, and south. So Central Africa was really the gap. So actually, this phase 2, what we try to do is actually to look at those sites that are solid and those sites that are weak and try to make a small shuffle and exchange of research trainees and PhD students so that they could go and learn from the other side and come in. Phase 1 had just 3 African countries with 1 northern partner, which is Germany, Tübingen. And major achievement during the phase 1 is that we established some of the infrastructures were renovated, like you see the Biotech Center in University of Yaoundé, the TB lab was renovated. And then in Congo, Brazzaville, the research lab in Makelele Hospital. And we had 14 students, 5 masters, 9 PhD, which we're going to look on that. Phase 2 was more on strengthening and expansion. So to empower the participating Central African nations by expanding the regional training platform to conduct clinical studies and poverty-related diseases. So during this phase 2, we had to increase now the expansion from 7 to 12 institutions across 8 countries. See, we had now more northern partners who could assist in capacity building, mentorship, because most of those aspects are really not new to us. Now, this is the principal CANTAM team. We have all the PIs from the different institutions in Central Africa who are working together to make things better. Achievement. One side, the work package 1 is actually working on this epidemiological study on TB, malaria, and NTDs, and they have already developed a protocol that's going to be used within all the sites in Central Africa. And then it's being managed by SEMEL, Professor Hakim. So during this phase, we have had 43 publications done already in impact journals. Training platform, we have 22 students supported by the network, 15 mentors supervised by 22 mentees, though this aspect is still challenging because the mentor system is not very visible as it should be, but we are taking the baby step, is going forward. So because of this network, we were able to get a clinical trial that came to Central Africa, and many of the institutions were involved because of CANTAM. Thanks to CANTAM, we could have this site clinical trial that was Pyramax, and actually more trials have been coming to us, CANTAM, for collaboration to see if we can do some research together and trials together, which luckily we have the infrastructures in place already. So we had some additional funding from other networks, other structures, Total, Fondation Muriel, and Prof. Francine is actually working really hard to make Central Africa visible. And I think she's doing a great job. She's also saying that she's getting tired, so we should also try to take the relay. Yeah. And this phase 3, this is CANTAM 3, is more our top gender, our priority is actually on this gender issue because it's a huge challenge. Because from when you look keenly, university level first degree, you have a lot of females. Masters, you see a lot of females. In the class, you see 15 females, maybe 5 boys. PhD, the reverse. 1 female, 5 boys. So it's really challenging. And Michelle has been, they actually had a meeting to see how they could to fill that gap. It was a big gap, and actually they step forward for that. So then during this phase 3, we had these 5 objectives, which at least before the phase 3 goes to an end, we should have achieved most of this. You know, sometimes, at times we are very overambitious, and sometimes if you are not faced with challenges, I don't think you would think better. So we always have deliverables that are beyond our capacity, but we try to meet up with what we can and the funds we have. The governance structure, it was not like this at the start, but now we've decided to expand. As I said, Francine said she's tired. So there's this part, they said deputy country coordinator. It was not there before. So it's introduced so that each country should be able to have a leader who manages the country first, and then we report to the coordination so that gradually anybody can take the lead. And then we have now work packages. One other challenge which we are working on is this external advisory board. So progress for this phase 3, as I indicated, this epidemiological and surveillance study on malaria, HIV, the protocol is set. We've had the ethical clearance, so now we are in the implementation phase. This is another ambitious part of research which strengthening clinical investigation of plants, traditional plants, especially with the outbreak of COVID. So we realized that, hey, in Cameroon, there are so many traditional medicines, traditional drugs, traditional herbs that was doing the job, and people were like getting satisfied. So there's actually that push. So we said, okay, let's try to get those different plants are using, and then we are working together with UCL. Once the ones who collect the sample, I think UCL will provide the medium so that they can go and do the testing. And this is another phase, this pharmacovigilance is working well with Congo-Brazza. Francine is pushing hard. And for Cameroon and Gabon, Cameroon is already registered, but we need to see how we can get more information, more publications on these pharmacovigilance regulatory authorities, because it's there, but it's dormant. So they need an active system. For capacity building, we have our partners who are always there for us. And we've realized we have a gap with data sharing, data management. That's why you see EDO is here. And the network of excellence, it's, I mean, the Global Health Network is there to be like the nucleus. It's more like every network of excellence comes to the Global Health Network so that we can actually create that bonding, which is lacking. It's a serious aspect that we are working with. That's why we could be here together, thanks to the Global Health Network. Regarding monitoring of trainees, well, during the phase 1, we had phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, the disparity is very clear that it's increasing. And phase 2, the gender aspect of it was, if you look keenly, phase 1, it's always all the male are leading. Phase 3, it's getting to equilibrium, kind of. The aspect of gender gap is this WISE project to strengthen the female gender in the sub-region. So there's a project still sponsored by EDCP and part of UK. So we selected, these are the selectees, the lucky ladies who won the grants, and they have been supported in their research. So from these different countries. Normally they requested 8, but we decided to get 9 so that everybody can get something. And the advantage with this is that most of these PhD students, we always try to tag them with master student, so that since you have those, your reagents and your material, you can support the junior ones to also rise. Okay, the networking and communication dissemination, actually it's good for us because Francine is like a very visible lady. So we have easy access with policymakers, other stakeholders. And then we also have these, our meetings with the networks of excellence. Sustainability development of CANTAM business plan. It's actually a process we are still developing. Appointment of assistant commercial clinical body, well, to lobby for other grants. That's why we have these proposals. These are for sustainability. We need to create these units and then unite all networks of excellence to collectively develop clinical research opportunities, which this is what we are working on. Challenges, the impact of COVID-19 brought a lot of challenges for us. And then we have this issue of fear that by going out to the big fish, we may be swallowed and then will not be visible. So we need to actually protect ourselves in a way. To then this increase the interaction of pharmaceutical structures, companies coming to us so that we can have shared activities. Yeah, CANTAM is now well known and attracts scientists and also projects, and then which is something, is a great achievement. At first, we are not visible, now we are visible. Scientists are involved in many overlapping initiatives, and it may be challenging to increase visibility of CANTAM. So that's one challenge which Jean-Pierre tried to insist on, that we need to try to give to Caesar what is Caesar. So we need to have researchers, we need to have managers, we need to have data team, so that every aspect should be visible. Yeah. So we want to acknowledge all these our partners and collaborators who helped us in one way or the other to be where we are, and we are working together as a team to surmount the challenges that come ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Leonard. So just to add that we've heard a lot about the PIs, the project coordinators getting tired. So one of the deliverables we have tasked the networks of excellence. Sorry?
I did not say that.
There's that sentiment. So one of the things is that we have tasked the networks of excellence to come up with a succession plan, because succession planning is something very important when it comes to networks, because that also contributes to sustainability of the network. We need to continue feeding the pipeline, and we need to ensure that we keep on investing in the junior researchers coming in. And that's also one of the reasons why with the female PhD program, we decided to make sure that each PhD fellow is assigned a master's student so that they can continue feeding into the pipeline. Thank you. So next is Bernard, who's the project manager for EACCR. But I'd also like to acknowledge Emily. Emily is also the co-project manager for EACCR. Emily, are you in the room? Please stand up, we need to see you. This is the second engine of EACCR.
Okay, thank you. Bernard is my name. In reality, Emily is the project manager, and I do the science. So I'm a medical doctor, so I do most of the science so that we can balance. So I'm talking about the EACCR, which is the East African Consortium for Clinical Research. I won't go into the history. I think by now we all realize this network started in 2009, and we're in the third phase of funding. That's our leadership team. Professor Kalebu is the overall coordinator at UVRI in Entebbe, and Professor Blandina in Tanzania is the deputy coordinator. I do the science work really to make sure everything happens, and I lead the HIV work package. Norbert in Kilifi leads the malaria work package. Reginald, again in KCRI, leads the training. Eric Mwok leads the neglected infectious diseases, is based in Kemri at Kisumu. Professor Sayoki at NIMRI leads the TB node, and Emily organizes all of us. So I want to begin with this because we realize it's very critical that we have quite political linkages. I think it's difficult to do work across several countries without the involving of the different people. So in that picture, that was the launch of, I think, the second round of funding. And as you can see on the extreme left is the representation from the Ministry of Health of Uganda, Dr. Laro. And then we have Dr. Makanga, who was the ED at EDCTP, Professor Kalebu, who was the lead. Kibiki, at that time, was the secretary for the East African Health Research Commission. He was the lead. I think currently is leading the African Research Excellence Fund. And then Professor Sam Okware is the executive director of UNRO, under which UVRI operates. So it is important that we have these linkages. At the launch of EDCTP, we had the Minister for the East African Health Commission with us. So as you can see, we have been involved in quite a number of things as a network, working with WHO Africa CDC and many of those things. So I think for us, one of our big achievements is this. We have clinical research monitors. And if you're in Africa, by the way, and you need clinical research monitors, please don't go to PPD, don't go to Quintiles. Those guys are very expensive. Our fellows are well trained. We have now 25. This year we are training another 10, and they're doing a good job. I think what we are running currently is we are monitoring the Meta-3 trial, which is sponsored by the Liverpool School. So it's not only Africans looking for us, even Europeans are now looking for us. So these guys are doing a great job. They've brought down tremendously the cost of monitoring trials in the region, but also improved the quality of research, because clinical trial monitoring is such an important bit. We've done some trainings, I think 6 PhDs, 19 masters, 400 plus short courses, and we still run the online courses with TGHN. I don't know what the metrics look like, Dennis, in terms of people who are accessing these courses, but at least we've tried to promote them. Many of the courses that people need to do research, GCP, ethics, research coordination, data management, we run all these and people have done. So in EDCTP, we have our 5 PhDs, which are tagged to the work packages. We've identified all of them. They've been registered and they've started studying, and 5 master's students. We are going to be very conservative this time. We realize trying to be very expansive to have many students sometimes is self-defeating. So we're trying to be as conservative as possible, but produce a good job. And of now, we've done 3 short courses with more than 60 people trained. We've done quite a number of studies. I probably won't show up the publications, but most of these were done in EDCTP2, and we're doing some more in EDCTP3. I think it's Leonard that has talked about Alert and Pandora. We are part of Alert and Pandora as a network, and we are doing quite a number of collaborative studies with them. As you can see, a number of universities and partners in East Africa working with the 2 networks of excellence that are looking at response preparedness. So this again is good work that we are doing. We've done some infrastructure developments. I think that is Emily there in the picture with the director of one of the regional referral hospitals in Uganda. These are ISO certified labs we have. I think centers of data management, we are doing that across the region, buying a bit of, servers, supporting internet, training people. And we also, for the ethics, we've trained a lot of people in ethics management, research ethics committee members. We've put up, I think, about 3 or 4 offices for research ethics committees in the region. And in Uganda right now, we are working with 2 hospitals to get their research ethics committees accredited by the National Council. Because what we realize is that, many research is done in peripheral sites, and you have some ethics research committee group at a center of excellence reviewing this study, and then they approve for work to be done at a remote hospital. Now, what we want to see is that these remote hospitals actually have their own ethics committees that can review the work and actually oversee the studies. This is where we are driving to, because I think that becomes important. The guys in the capital may actually not know what are the ethical issues. The other day I was talking to one of our people. We're doing a very small study, self-testing for HIV, and the refund was just about $4. And so I was talking to him, how did you manage to get people to allow to test for HIV? And the guy told me, you just don't know the magic of $4 in this economy. And for me, that is a little bit of exploitation, if you may. People going and bringing their whole family members because everybody is going to get $4. And at the end of the day, we shall have about $25 just to get to prick yourself for HIV. I mean, it's one of those things. So we want to see ethics committees on the ground evaluating research and protecting the participants against exploitation. We've got a bit of grants. The CAFESI is what everybody is talking about, the female, CAFESI is capacity building for female scientists in East Africa. We have 8 of them. We have EDCTP, which is looking at improving early identification and management of TB in the region. I think this is in Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, and Sudan. We have the point of care viral load monitoring study, which is involving 28 sites across the region. And we are trying to revolutionize viral load monitoring in children because if you look at national data across the countries, it's children that are not suppressing. So we want to see how do we improve this. And we think that one of the key changes is having point of care tested. I mean, viral load tested at point of care, because in East Africa, it is still centralized testing. You have a site where people come for treatment, they take a test for the viral load, and the sample is sent to the capital 300 kilometers away to be tested. And then the results will come back a month later, 2 months later. I think for the clinician to make a decision using a result that is 2 months old is a little bit out of order. So we are trying to see that, can we do point of care? Can we have, and there are facilities, there's Gene Expert, there is MPMA that you can use at the point of care. The patient will have to wait for 1 hour. They'll get their result back, but at least a decision can be made immediately. And so that is what we are trying to do with that. And to see, one, will the people be happy to wait for 1 hour? Maybe, maybe not. It's going to increase workload for the clinician, because previously you see the patient, they go and they have to come back later. Now, there is a little bit more work for the clinician. Are they happy to have this work done like that? So we are looking, it's more of an implementation study. And so we want to see how it goes. We have the Access Africa, post-trial access. Loads of studies done in Africa, but do we actually benefit from them studies? I think so. What we are trying to see is how do we improve, regulation for post-trial access? And it's funny, we just did a quick survey. I think in Uganda, Ethiopia, Ghana, I think Nigeria, and even South Africa. And first of all, even the investigators, the PIs, are not even aware of issues around post-trial access. The ethics committee members, they're not aware. Most of them know some line in the regulations exist. But if you ask them as an ethics committee, do you have a way to evaluate this? And most of them don't. So this project is actually trying to improve that. Okay, those are our ladies. The Magic 8, hopefully they will graduate, and they have 8 below them. So we hope things will be great when they finish. Strategies for ESCCR 3, I think we want to build on the successes before, but I think key point is number 3. For us, we want hands-on, because you come and train people, you come and you bring infrastructure, you do all these things, but if you actually never do research, that's a waste of time. Knowledge has a half-life. We used to study about half-life of things. So my university lecturer used to tell us, for every 1 year you spend up country, this POP above knee reduces by 1 inch. And if you spend 10 years, you'll be putting it at the knee level. So we need to make sure that people are applying what they are studying. And so, our strategy is to make sure that these small sites are actually working and doing research. So we are partnering senior researchers with junior researchers to actually conduct research in those small sites. And we are beginning to see a bit of fruit from there. This is what we've so far done. I think I've already talked about that. And the last one, we have our small studies that we managed to convince EDCTP to fund in these partner small sites, and they're all beginning to take effect. So we believe that things will be okay. We've worked with TGHN again to put up the Africa COVID-19 hub. Dennis, please, Dennis, let's wave your hand. Dennis has been at the forefront of that, and we were able to bring about a few investigators that were doing work on COVID-19 in Africa. We've had a bit of webinars there. I think COVID-19 is, quickly running out, but I think this for me was a good thing to come together. Yeah, it's lost the wind over time. Those are our challenges. I think the others people have spoken about, but I think for Michelle and the other people here, Horizon 2020, for me, a 3-year funding cycle is very short. It's very difficult to support a PhD in 3 years in Africa. I think in Europe it's possible, but in Africa it's a huge challenge. So most of the people we enroll the project ends and they're not finished. So it's even difficult to report to Michelle and say, we have our stars here. So if that can be revisited, I think that would be great. Yeah, that is our strategy. Again, grant applications, writing grants is what we are thinking. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernard. Point noted on the 3-year funding cycle. I'll take that back to senior management. Okay, so the floor is open for questions. I'd ask the speakers to come to the front.
Good morning, everyone. Okay. My name is Gloria Mason Ross. I'm from Liberia. And many thanks to our speakers for the great presentation, enlightening us on the great work you all are doing in your respective country and regions. So I'm glad the last speaker talked about it. I'm more interested in research ethics, and I saw that a lot of the presentations, I didn't hear much from the first 3 speakers on what is the role of research ethics in your different network in terms of training, capacity building. And maybe you can, I'm sure we have benefited from EDCTP on research ethics. And my country also, we did a lot of work in a region where there's a limitation when it comes to capacity building around research ethics. So I hope, I'm sure you guys are doing something in that line. And also for the West African network, for countries that are not part, how can they be incorporated and what are the processes? Thank you.
Okay, Liberia from West Africa. I was glad to be in Liberia, I think 4 months ago, yes, within another project, which is called Save the Lives and Livelihoods. It's a huge project coordinated by Professor Boop. So I'm glad that somebody from Liberia is here. So as I said, we do have nearly all the countries in West Africa, member of CANTAM, except Niger and Liberia. So yeah, we have processes. We'll continue communicating. Just send a mail, an official letter to the coordinator, express your wish to join the network, and then we'll follow the processes. And then, yeah, we'll send you questionnaires, you'll fill them up, and then we'll take it from there. Regarding ethics, I can say, as far as we are concerned in West Africa, that most of our sites have institutional ethic board. It is very important. And I said, today you cannot manage a consortium if you don't manage all the aspects of the research ecosystem. And ethic is part of it. Our colleagues from MRCG are here, Badou and Lamin, and they know that ethics is very important. And we have a fully dedicated sub-work package for ethics managed by Mrs. Elizabeth Bachili. This is to tell you that it is very, very important in our activities.
So I saw second hand, yep.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lungo Motlabane from Botswana, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you all for the presentations. I had one question, which was related to your role in clinical research and how that, and the publications, and how that has actually influenced Ministry of Health programs in how they implement their work. So for example, we spoke about the malaria and TB trials and publications. How has that informed malaria elimination programs or control programs in some of these countries? I'm particularly interested in Southern Africa, but the question is open to any one of you. Thank you.
Okay, so I may not respond for Tessa, but I think generally speaking, maybe let's make this disclaimer. EDCTP doesn't fund us to do research. That's primary. I think EDCTP funds a platform that should build capacity for us to conduct research. I don't know whether that makes a difference. So they want to give us money, for instance, as networks of excellence. We're not given money to go and do, a malaria vaccine study, but they give us money to build capacity that we can attract money to do the malaria vaccine study. And so you may not find a lot of policy impacting research done primarily by the networks, but their partners and funders in the partners and institutions in the network are actually doing a lot of, policy impacting research. And I think that is very critical. And I can give an example of ourselves in Uganda. We've recently just done a study, again, evaluating use of point of care for viral load monitoring. And we just wanted to see how well, the point of care viral load platforms look compared to, the conventional Roche PCR in the labs. And out of those studies, Uganda has actually taken up point of care viral load monitoring, not maybe very much for the whole population because it may not yet be fundable, but at least for the pregnant mothers and breastfeeding women, it's very critical because those you need to take decisions very quickly to ensure that you eliminate vertical transmission of disease. So there's a lot of work that goes on in the networks, but not maybe from the main funding. I don't know whether that answers your question. Thank you.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Bernard. I just want to add that we, as we said, EDCTP funded the network to become collaborative platform for research. And as far as we are concerned, in West Africa, for example, during the outbreak of COVID, this gentleman there, Professor Mbo, played a key role with the Ministry of Health of Senegal. And MRC and EDCTP did a lot in COVID, in sequencing, for example, Noguchi. So we have strong platforms ready to respond to pandemics. And this is what EDCTP wants, to have strong institutions who are capable to handle any aspect of research and respond to pandemics with well-trained researchers if they arise. And this happened during the COVID outbreak. And EDCTP is an official site to perform PCR tests for travelers. We were overwhelmed 2 years ago. Now COVID is going down. Otherwise, we played a key role. And I'm sure our colleague from Burkina Faso, for example, malaria, Professor Halidou Tinto, who is one of our superstars, plays a key role. And he was going to be appointed minister, but he refused and decided that his collaborator, the lady, should become the Ministry of Health of Burkina Faso. Many years ago, I think President Bob declined this several times. They wanted to appoint a minister. He said, no, President Wad, I'm sorry, I like my research. So we have, these passionate researchers who are serving their countries. And now in West Africa, we want WANITAM to become like the ECOWAS of science. And if Liberia and Niger joins, we can say that WANITAM is now covering the entire West Africa. Thank you.
Thanks. So just a point of clarification. So EDCTP is in its second program. That's the second 10-year program. But in the first program, which ended in 2025, we gave funding to the networks of excellence to conduct studies and to ensure that they have sites that are prepared to take on clinical trials. So the first round of funding focused on epidemiological studies and just, preparing the site so that they can get to a point where they can attract clinical trials. So now in the second round of funding, we're not funding any research because we believe we have prepared them to be sufficient and to be able to attract clinical trials and clinical research and grants from other funders. So what we're focusing on is supporting or rather strengthening the clinical trial environment. And that's where, and that's why it's under the coordination and support action, which focuses on networking and collaboration. So I just wanted to clarify that. So I think we had a third hand.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Noshim Farzana from Bangladesh. We are from Asian region. Thank you, the presenters, for presenting wonderful your achievements. We are actually going to establish similar kind of network in Asian regions. So I'd like to know from the presenters for two things. That one is from CANTAM about their business plan. What is their mean by their business plan? And another thing, how the EDCP network is supporting students for master's and PhD programs. Are these funded programs, or they're appointed to any university? What is how these programs are actually they're maintaining? We'd like to know about this. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's actually a very smart question, because many people are always asking, how do we fund these students and how do we come about it? Actually, the PIs are actually like the points of entry, okay? The different PIs are mostly professors, big professors. So professors, they have students and they have access to institutions, okay? So once we make a call for any of these opportunities that come up from EDCP, and there are requirements that EDCP puts in place that they want. So we do the publicity in our various institutions, and then even spread it out to the zonal countries. Even if you don't belong to the CANTAM institution, because we have people from Chad who are not in CANTAM. So once they apply, I mean, the other time, Bernard invited me for one interview because there's one student who came from a French-speaking country and they don't speak French. So it shows that we cut across the bonding. And then the second question regarding the business plan, it's actually, what is our plan and what is our way forward? So we always have these steering committee meetings, right, yearly, where we sit with all the PIs and then brainstorm where we are, how do we plan to move, where are our gaps, and then we try to come up with a small monitoring system. And even though it's always challenging to cut it across, but we take steps forward. That's how we proceed with it. Thank you. I hope I helped you. Okay.
All right. So Francis Kombe is my name. And I want to ask a question both to EDCTP as well as the Centers of Excellence. So the question regards to mentorship. I realize you've spoken quite eloquently about PhD programs and master's programs. Having gone through the experience myself, I realize that there's a lot of support when students are developing, proposals. Once the proposal gets funded, the student is on their own, and there's very limited, support from, the supervisors and some of the networks that are, usually they, give a lot of support when a student is developing the proposal. And I'm just wondering from, the EDCTP point of view, as well as from the, Centers of Excellence, what are your thoughts regarding mentorship? Because I realize this is a docket that is really lacking within the continent. Students do not have mentors to look up to and actually share some of the frustrations that they go through when they're doing their, projects. Thank you.
So thank you very much for that question. And that's a huge issue, mentorship. From EDCP's side, we've noted that mentorship frameworks are more so lacking across sub-Saharan Africa. They're not strong enough. So what we've decided is that through the EDCP networks of excellence is to try and just encourage them to strengthen the mentorship frameworks and to also share and exchange, the success stories, and also to not only focus on themselves, but also look outside and see what else is being done out there. Another thing is that when it comes to the fellowships that we award, we ensure that a mentorship framework is a deliverable in that proposal. So this is something that we follow up on with the PI and ensure that the students are actually mentored. We request for the reports, and after that, we also follow up with the students. So that's what we've been doing. But it's an area that we still have to invest in. Yeah.
Okay, I can give the example from East Africa. Professor Pontiano, you're welcome. Professor is our boss in ESCC and does a great job. So what do we do? For us, your concern is very valid. Sitting on a few examination panels for students at Makerere, you'll find that it's very clear the student is supported for proposal development, and they're left alone to collect the data and to write up. They come for the defense and it's total disaster, which could have been avoided. What we do in our network actually with our students, they are attached to projects and to principal investigators and experienced researchers who work with them all the journey through, from proposal development way up to the defense. So that's what it's a hand in hand. That is for the scholarly kind of mentorship, to make sure that, you're not only taught how to write a proposal, but you can actually see where problems will come from in data collection. Even when the proposal is actually good, things could go wrong in data collection, and things could go wrong in analysis because you might analyze the wrong things, and things could go wrong in the write-up. So the support in the ESCCR is actually all through, and we're actually creating an online mentorship platform where we are going to be open to people who feel they need mentorship, and we'll put the mentors out there, and people can connect and interact, and that support will come. The other form of mentorship that we do, again, is the hands-on. We have, exchange programs in laboratories, so people can, visit, for instance, the MRC lab, and they learn new techniques in that lab. We could do, for instance, a molecular diagnostic training, for emerging infections. We don't only stop at the training in the room, but we then create platforms where people can come to the centers of excellence, spend a month, spend 6 weeks learning actually to do those techniques that they can then take back to their countries and do that. So that's the kind of mentorship that we do to make sure that things are okay and then people are not left, kind of hanging. Thank you.
Yeah, we have a local system, the way we manage our mentorship in CANTAM in Central Africa. For example, we have these students from WISE project, the female gender study that we recruited some students. So those students have their interests, their projects. For example, we have Lynn Loba. Please raise your hand up. Lynn. Yeah, she's one of the selectees for the WISE project, and she's interested in research and management. So she was selected to come here, sponsored by CANTAM, money from EDCTP. So she's asking a lot of questions to me. So it's kind of mentoring, so that maybe if there's an opportunity, another project or grant, she can easily run it without our consent. So we do that in a little bit local way, which I think it's working. That's how we apply it as well.
So I just want to add on what has been said. I think we as a network, we are looking in documenting all those processes. I think we as a network, we need to come up with a policy. We need to come up with the mentorship programs and training program where we can put everything together and then publish for everyone to know. Because as we know, there is certain regulation within, there is a requirement from the EDCP guidelines, and there is a regulation which is linked to the institution level. So we need to balance those things and come up with the common criteria, how we select the student, how we support the student, how we're dealing with this matter of supervision, co-supervision, because this is something which is serious. Like we're here together, maybe we can discuss about it, how we can come together and come up with a process, policy and career development and so on and so on. Thank you.
Yeah, I can't leave this question without saying something. And I'm sure Professor Mbop will not be happy, because if we count the number of students mentored, it is like, So again, this is why I was speaking about professionalization of research management, There are plenty of things that we do which are not correctly documented. So EDCTP may not really know on the ground what we are doing in terms of mentorship. So we need to really keep improving the way we report things. Because if I take EDSF alone, we have plenty of students, masters, PhDs, and even students coming from other countries. MRC, if you say there is no mentorship, I think Badou and Lamin will tell Umberto that Jean-Pierre did not do his job in Cape Town, because there is a lot that they are doing there. Professor Sanjay, who is head of training, and career development is doing a lot in terms of mentorship within the network. So maybe what we have to do is to, as you said, is to find a mentorship framework and report what mentors are doing, what the outputs, and those who are mentored, how they grow, and how they also mentor other people. Because this is something we are doing in our way, as I said, but we need a specific framework to really report it so that EDCTP knows what we are doing on the ground. So this is something which is really lacking, and I think we all agree that we have to improve the way we report what we are doing.
So the one last question, the burning question.
Yeah, I come from the Botswana Harvard AIDS Institute. This is a partnership between the government of Botswana and the Harvard University. So we've been mentoring people in different areas through Fogarty. And then I'm also one of the original members who started EDCTP. My name is Rosemary Musonda, sorry. Yes, and I think I just wanted to let everybody know that the models in terms of mentorship and the institutions that are involved within the networks of excellence are very different. So depending on the diverse structures which you have in different institutions, the mentorship is provided at institution level as well as the universities. For example, for us, most of our students are enrolled with the University of Botswana. So we have committees between the University of Botswana as well as the Botswana Harvard AIDS Institute. And depending on the project of an individual student, they are also linked to the PI of that project because they tap into that data set, or indeed, some of the research materials that they are using. So it's a matter of having a committee, and we've graduated a number of students, and one of them is defending a PhD, this week on Friday, part of the TESA network. So there are different models, but the most important is where they are doing their research, because the whole issue here is capacity building in terms of research, so that we have a future scientist within Africa. I think that's what I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you for finally giving me the floor. Let me start by introducing myself. I am Elvis Tenfak, Senior Research Officer at Africa's Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. I'll just make 2 comments and then I have my question. I think part of my question has been answered in the discussions. So somebody asked a question about how the research output of these networks of excellence have changed policy. And during the presentation, I was identifying some people who have worked on some really great research on the continent, some of which have even been used to change WHO guidelines of management of HIV. And the second comment I want to make here is that from all the presentations that have been made, there was this issue of mentorship. And I think in any professional development, especially in research, which needs continuous work and continuous hands-on, there is the need for someone to hold your hand and make you take baby steps. And when you get to a certain level, you have to hold other people's hands to do that. It's a continuous process. So this is really nice because it's within the capacity building framework of workforce that we know, because there is need for trained personnel in Africa. So it's really been nice to listen to all of these presentations, because at the level of the African Union, we have a flagship program called Workforce Development Initiative. And one of the key steps that we want to carry out is to map the different types of capacity buildings that are ongoing, and then see how the mentorship program, the mentorship is ongoing, and then also think about how to sustain career over time, such that we don't have this brain drain, which is a major consequence on our continent. So I think that's also one area that we are going to collaborate on, to see how we can build a mentorship framework, as you said, within this workforce development initiative. My question was with respect to the fact that when I looked at all the different work packages of the networks of excellence, there was mostly HIV, TB, malaria. I understand that these networks of excellence were built at a time when there was a call for action on these 3 diseases that was plaguing the continent the most. And there was some shy mention of some work on neglected tropical diseases. There was mention of emerging and re-emerging diseases, and then COVID came and took a great chunk of the work. So I just want to know, like, was this guided by this call for action against HIV, TB, and malaria? And how has the network evolved to be able to incorporate the research in other diseases? I know it's capacity building to be able to have a platform that can do research on other diseases. But how, during this journey, have you been able to incorporate? Because when you look at people who may join the network, somebody who is not doing research on HIV or TB or malaria may shy away from joining the network because they may say that's the only thing that has been done. So it would be nice to, I mean, I'm not expecting an answer, but it would be nice to have that coffee break discussion on how the network has been potentiated to be able to incorporate people doing research in thematic areas other than those ones. Thank you very much. I didn't want to address it to Michelle. Oh.
Yeah, I think that the aim of the network was primarily based on those 3 diseases, but it was really capacitate people to do research and clinical trial through different programs and the cross-cutting activities. And the experience maybe was that some disease happens like Ebola, and Ebola was the first one where it was shown the need to at least the capacity which was there was used against Ebola. And it came naturally also for coronaviruses, COVID-19. So it's a natural process showing that the most important was having really very well-trained people on different aspects who can react not only, and also was the same for non-communicable disease. So really, people were prepared for those 3 diseases, but it was naturally used when the need was there for the really emergency at one moment. So it's a natural process.
I think that should be part of the showcase.
Yeah, I think comment is for the female PhD program. Yes, I think even EDCTP international has swayed us away from those diseases. Yeah. So we're looking at health economics, non-communicable diseases, research and development, and so there is a move generally to go away from tradition.
And we have 2 work packages. Work package 4 dedicated to NTDs, and work package 5 dedicated to emerging and emerging disease infection. And even in the cross-cutting, we are taking into account all the ecosystem of research, as I said. So we are moving forward.
Please do that in the next showcase.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
What I yes. Yeah, because you can see that the better notes. I think we have so much work to do. I think it's good.
Yeah. So we just continue. It's not over. Yeah, this is just the first phase. Yeah. So now we have not yet. No coffee. Maybe after the Delta discussion. Yeah. So we have Fran. No, it's Sam. Dr. Sam is going to coordinate this next phase of the Delta Africa consortia. So it's also going to be very exciting. and we are going to share and learn cross-cutting experience as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Very quickly, just to introduce the Deltas Consortium. As some of you may be aware, the Wellcome Trust and what is now FCDO, but used to be DFID and then became UK Aid, have been for a very long time involved in developing research capacity in Africa. But for a long time, the way it used to work was that there were a few individual grants or grant systems, grant calls, but for the bigger ones, you tended to need to have a UK institution as a lead institution, and then the UK institutions would opt for an African partner. But around 2009, through discussions that myself and others, people like Professor Dhumbi we started pushing for the shifting of the center of African research, the center of gravity of African research, to Africa. And the outcome of two meetings, one of which was actually held, one in Dar es Salaam and one here in Cape Town, was the agreement that there would be a new funding mechanism where the funders would give money to an African platform, and the African platform would then lead in dispensing the funding to African consortia. And at that point in 2008, the first set, or 2009, the first sort of funding that went out was for 5 consortia, which were called then the African Institution Initiatives. And the difference here was that it's the African partners who came together and they decided who would be their northern partner. So they were led from African institutions. And that the AIA went on until around 2013, when again there were discussions on how to succeed the African Institutions Initiative. And that is when the Deltas was born, Developing Excellence in Leadership and Training in African Science. And the Deltas, again, the concept was the same. You have African institutions coming together to form consortia and then choosing which northern partners they want to work with. And 10 consortia were funded through that first round of the Deltas call. We are now in the process of waiting for the second funding of Deltas 2. There have been a few challenges, which are part of the challenges. I think myself, Professor Dhumbi, Professor Jude will be talking about. And so what I'm going to share with you is one of the initiatives was funded under Deltas 1, but actually, or rather, we got the designation as ideal at the beginning of the Deltas funding, but actually we are older. We are part of the African Institutions Initiative since 2008. And what I'm going to do, rather than at the end tell you key lessons, I'm going to intertwine my talk on what we have achieved with the lessons that we have learned. I come from the Kemru Welcome Research Program in Kenya, and now you can start my 2 minutes. Not 2 minutes, my 12 minutes. Yeah. Well, I can talk quickly, but not that quickly. Yeah. And so at the Kemru Welcome Program, which was established in 1989, we had always had this idea of needing to develop local research capacity. It had a strong input from Oxford University then. And initially, the way we were doing this was on an ad hoc basis, where you have a bit of money in a project, you do a training. The problem with that is that you cannot really build capacity systematically. So we started thinking about what do you need to build a sustainable capacity. So the first thing is that it's important to define what we mean by capacity. And on the far end is that's often the typical description. When people say we are doing capacity building, you have research done elsewhere, basically research done elsewhere in the rest of the world. An intervention is developed, and then that intervention is brought to Africa. So Africa is a clinical trial site. And then what happens, you develop very quick capacity, technical capacity, because you need the data collectors, you need some phlebotomists to pick some blood, you need a bit of technical people to look down a microscope. And then the trial ends,
and the sites pretty much shuts down because there's no more activity going on. And then the people who you trained actually have nowhere to go. So you do not have sustainable capacity. Of course, I know here I'm preaching to the converted because EDCTP is working to try and remove or to circumvent that sort of approach. And so for us in defining sustainable capacity, we were not only looking at technical ability, we're looking at developing people who have capacity to define locally relevant research agenda. So it's that they have the agency to determine where they want the research to go. People who have the scientific credentials for engagement in translation to policy and practice, people with skills to negotiate with research stakeholders, be they funders, be they participants, be they policymakers. People very key who have the capacity to teach, supervise, and mentor the next generation of researchers. And finally, people who will advocate for investment, for more investment in research with local government, with the private sector, and with all the bilateral partners that we engage with. The next thing is they said you have to have a deliberate and systematic approach to capacity building. And this was our sort of a vision. We are looking for African-led research solving Africa's and global health problems. Our mission is to create a critical mass of research readers, and we have our values as long-term horizon, and I'll talk to that a bit more, comprehensive training, so not just technical, and also obviously inclusivity and equity. You need resources. There is no way you're going to build sustainable research capacity without resources. And here's an example. We, as I indicated, at the Chem Welcome Trust Research Program, which hosts IDEAL, initially we were depending on individual grants. It became clear this cannot be sustainable, or you cannot build really sustainable capacity just on ad hoc funding. And we asked the Wellcome Trust for funding, and we got £12 million, and subsequently another 8 million. And now we are looking at 3 million pounds from the Wellcome Trust, and also another sort of 40% additional supplementary funding from the individuals who actually do the training. So the actual PhD students, their projects are funded from all these different grants that their peers hold. So you can see the sort of scale, and I heard that Gates is here, there are a number of other people. These are sort of scale. Please don't give us 300,000 and ask us how we've impacted on. I'm being a bit arrogant. You know, they normally say beggars shouldn't be, but you know, if you give me 300,000 and ask me, have I changed capacity in Africa? I'm sorry, I haven't, but I've got a salary. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. So we're talking of this sort of scale. And you will even see with this scale, we still barely scratch the demand for Africa. It is estimated that Africa has to have about 100,000 PhDs every year for us to start getting to par with countries like China. You know, we are on something like 100 scientists per million researchers. Countries like Israel, China, and these places are now in the thousands. That's the only way we are going to start competing in the science market. So we need resources and we need money. I'm passionate about this thing. Then you need strong support structures within your institutions, within your network. This is an example of this support structure within our institution. We're able to call on very strong operational support, scientific support from the institution. We have a team, a secretariat, if you like, and we are also able to call upon a large number of collaborators who serve as mentors and supervisors. Then you need to consider how long and what it takes to develop a research leader. And there are three aspects that this pyramid tells us. The first is that you need long-term commitment. We're looking at 3 to sort of, if you begin and look at this journey upwards, assuming even everything is going well and that your third reviewer of your grant doesn't say this is not very good, then you're still talking of 15 years before people really get grounded on what you're calling research leaders. The second thing is that you can see there is obviously a drop-off, and this is true everywhere in the world. The difference is in the UK, you start with 20,000 PhDs. If you lose 90%, you have 1,000 good researchers. In Africa, many countries, you're talking of 100 PhDs or even 50 per year. So when you lose your so many, you end up with 3 or 4. and 2 of them get grabbed by some other place. So you end up with 1. So you need to really support this transition, ensure you're having the maximum transition. The third aspect is that you need to start with a large pool because of what I've said. So look for a large pool of good quality people. So even as you trim off, then you're still remaining with a large number. Now, the people you train are not lost, even if they leave research. It's still important to have people who are research savvy, going into government, going into private sector, because these are the people we go back and engage with. You want a minister or you want your head of vaccination as someone who has really received high quality training. So it's not that I'm saying they're lost, but it's important to be aware of this attrition. 1 minute, I'm only a quarter away. It's important to have, I hope you took out the introduction part. That was for general deltas. Yeah, it's important to have a really good implementation framework. And this is an implementation framework. You attract good people to research, train through PhD and masters, retain through transition support and postdoc support, and transform, give training in transformative leadership. And we have different schemes that cover that. Importantly, we look at 3 areas of input: competence development, training environment, and support environment. And in each of these, it's very key that you focus on the quality and the support you're giving your students. We talked about, this is, for example, our supervisory and mentorship team. All our PD students have 3 teams around them: supervisory team, an independent monitoring and advisory team, and an external pool of advisors that they can access beyond their supervisors. And they have to meet with these people regularly, and they have to have a formal report submitted. Just very quickly, allow me a minute or so. This is our output. For example, our pages, since 2008, we have had 114 pages completed. We have 60 currently. And as you can see, we have retained most of them in research, either in our own programs, but also elsewhere in Africa, in universities, and in health-related sectors. For example, WHO, some of you may know people like Abdisalam Noor, who is the head of malaria program, and many others. Many of them are now heading various departments. 14 of them have achieved a professorship, and we are very keen on how much they're bringing back into the system. This is just graduate internship. They come for 1 year after graduation, and they spend a year with us, mainly focusing on experiential learning. Now we're able to give them a PGD, postgraduate diploma certificate, together with a local university. 276, and you can see most of them have followed on from the internship and gone on to become scientists, or have remained in the scientific community and era. And just to show that although it looks like a straightforward ladder, this is a sort of path that people follow. Some people go straight to PhD, some people have gone through masters, others have become research assistants before going to masters, before going to PhD. And this is the pathway that I was talking about. I will jump that, but this was really to emphasize the long-term horizon. This is a person who came to us as an intern and has been consistently supported all the way through, and now clearly, has achieved what you comfortably call them research leaders. But you can see it's been a long journey of engaging with the same person and building them over and over. We don't just count output, we also count impact. And an example is during the COVID-19 pandemic, the majority of people are supporting Kenya in the response in all these different areas, from sequencing to modeling to everything. Many of them were trained through our system. The other thing I wanted to emphasize is the multidisciplinarity. All these arrows are the data that different people are generating and then being used by someone else. We have had a very big output since 2008. I was looking at the lifetime count. We are now over 1,500, actually, as per the last count. And we have been presenting in very many places. We have had papers, both high impact, but also high impact in the local setting. Important to exploit a very large network of collaborators. Beyond the partners that you have in your network, you need to have a wide range of collaborators, especially for mentoring and training. Challenges, I said it at the beginning, I'll just repeat it. We are very dependent on external funding, domestic. last one, domestic funding. We need our own government to start putting in. We cannot talk about that we value research, but we expect the Wellcome Trust to fund Africa's research. Wellcome Trust is good. They have funded me for almost 25 years, but I always say this to them. They are only, what do you call this? Plaster, Band-Aid. They're Band-Aid, really. We should be the ones treating our own symptoms. So we need to push that very strongly. The issue of retention, the more you train, the challenge you end up with. How do you retain people in Africa and provide the sort of setting they have become used to so that they can continue producing good science? Local universities, bureaucracy, this has been said. I have funding for 3 years. Sometimes it takes a year to just get a proposal registered for you to be told, yes, you can start your PhD. By the time they are saying, oh, now you've started, your funding has finished. So it becomes like, yeah. And finally, uptake of science. Again, we assume, and this is, allow me the last comment only. You give us 50,000 funders and you ask me how I'm changing policy, or you give me 20,000 pounds. Would you change policy with 20,000 pounds in the UK? Would even the minister listen to you? That's even like, that's a postdoc's salary. So let's be serious about, if we want to have uptake, it's also important that we look for funding to fund expertise in knowledge brokerage and the policy making linkages. Thank you very much. And sorry for taking a bit more time. And now I'm the chair, so it's also my pleasure to welcome Professor Thumbi. Professor Thumbi, I never tire saying this, that he, despite me looking much older than him, he was my first mentor back in 1992 at the University of Nairobi. He was my undergraduate project supervisor. And since then, he has achieved a huge amount in the HIV and TB research. So Thumbi, it's always a pleasure to welcome you.
Thank you so much, Sam. And that's probably you should have presented after me, not before me, because now you've taken all the limelight out of what I was going to say. You can boast. Yeah, but I have to take credit always for his presentations and how good they are. Okay, I'm going to present on the Sub-Saharan Africa Network for TB and HIV Research Excellence. It was one of the Sub-Saharan Africa Network for TB and HIV Research Excellence is one of those 11 Deltas programs that was funded by the Wellcome Trust. And we had 4 objectives. By the way, I'm from the Africa Health Research Institute in Durban, South Africa. And the Africa Health Research Institute is the lead institute for that consortium. And we had 4 applicant institutions. And we also had it's called SANTE, Global Health Network. So I'm going to talk about our experiences based on our funding from 2015 to 2021. We had 4 objectives for our network. The first objective was research on HIV and TB. And the idea was African-led research on HIV and TB, because most of the research, even on TB and HIV, has originated from outside of Africa. So the first was to develop an African-led program of research on HIV and TB. And it was to be a cross-disciplinary, multidisciplinary program. So we didn't want to focus on basic or clinical science. We wanted to really have a multidisciplinary program of research. The second objective was to offer a training and capacity building program across 12 African research sites. The third was to build a strong institutional network for excellence, for research excellence as a pathway to intellectual and financial independence for African investigators and their institutions. And we were going to do this through pilot grants, some infrastructure support, as well as administrative support. And then the fourth objective was to enhance community engagement, because we realized that community and public engagement is very important for translation of research. And that's something that, researchers tend to to overlook. So in terms of these are the partner sites that were involved. The 4 main sites were Africa Health Research Institute, the Botswana Harvard AIDS Institute, the Kemri Wellcome Trust in Kilifi, and the Rwanda Zambia HIV Research Group, which operates both in Zambia as well as in Rwanda. There were other sites that we called corroborating, I think we called them corroborating sites. So in total, we were 12, but these were the main partner sites. In terms of our accomplishments, this is summarized here in these slides. We have had, over the period of the grant, we had about 254 publications, 114 of them led by female investigators, 114 led by male investigators, and 140 by females. 95 of these publications were first authored by our trainees, our fellows, and 171 included the fellows as co-authors. And then we had 78 presentations in international meetings. We ran a number of skills building courses. We offered 17 corroborative grants, five path to independence grants for mid and early career investigators who are transitioning to independence. And each one of them was worth $100,000 US. So this actually helped some of our senior postdocs to return to their own countries and establish their own research groups. We had 178 travel grants, and we had 52 consumable awards. We were able to attract a lot of additional funding, so it's all listed there. So I'm not going to go into all that. And also, we trained more than 100 PhD or master's students or postdoctoral fellows. And so you can see that there were a lot of outputs out of this. We learned some lessons through this grant, and we have summarized some of our findings and some of the lessons learned in these publications that we published about 2 years ago in BMC Public Health. And these are the recommendations of the key components to support capacity building in Africa. One is to directly empower African-based researchers rather than doing it through proxies in high-income countries. Offer quality training. So we cannot overemphasize the importance of quality training. Even as we develop this African capacity building, it is really important that we put components of excellence and quality into these programs to ensure that we are delivering for our junior and early career African scientists, and also to support the staff that are involved in this program. So it's not enough to just support the trainees in these programs who are undertaking scientific training. It's really important to also support the staff that are involved in these programs. And then, of course, number 3 is that there needs to be effective knowledge exchange and collaboration around capacity building initiatives in Africa. So going into some of the details in a little bit more details in terms of these 3 areas. Directly empower African-based researchers. I think it is really important to identify and support locally initiated and led efforts through calls for scientific concept sheets, submissions, and then select those based on relevance to local problems, the feasibility of implementation, and the potential impact. Number 2 is inclusion and participation of scientists in wide networks to support scientific efforts. So for example, we organized in our case research days. We had annual consortium meetings that were well funded, and all the researchers involved in our consortium participated in order for them to obtain scientific critique and to support the growth and training and the growth of these scientific programs. And then funding to support small scale projects. And we had a lot of funding actually embedded within our grant to support small scale projects. So we had, for example, collaborative grants that allowed investigators in different sites to actually do projects jointly. And that we found to be very useful, as well as the Path to Independence Awards that I mentioned earlier on. And then in terms of offering high quality training, it's important not to just focus on the individuals, but the idea of developing a critical mass. You cannot be an excellent scientist in isolation. You cannot just be operating somewhere alone and become an excellent scientist. You know, places that actually end up with excellent science are places where there is a critical mass of people that are supporting each other, that are all aligned in terms of vision and strategic objectives, and then working together to achieve that. And then provide key skills training, including soft skills. A lot of our scientists are not trained in soft skills. They just get training in the technical aspects of the work. And so I think it's important that we do that. We provided travel scholarships. This enables people to travel to other institutions within Africa, but also outside of Africa, to enhance training, and then promotion of effective mentorship. We cannot, again, overemphasize the importance of mentorship, as somebody mentioned earlier on. It's really critical for the success of these programs. And then, of course, in terms of effective information exchange and collaboration, we need forums to exchange ideas and interact like we are doing in this meeting. And that's why I was really very excited to come to this meeting to learn from what others are doing. There needs to be cross-site collaborations. This can be done through collaborative grants and travel scholarships, and then information sharing through public and community engagement is also really important in order for these networks of research excellence to grow. So we summarized all of this, and these are some of the lessons that we learned. There are 7 specific points that I'm not going to, because I can see that my time is running out. But really, we have to start obviously with external funding. And we're here obviously because we have external funding. But if these programs are to be sustainable, as Sam has mentioned, we have to move more towards local-based funding. And we have to convince our governments and local philanthropists these programs are worth funding. It's not just enough to fund a hospital. We have to also fund training programs, which are long-term by their very nature. They're not sprints, as Michelle mentioned earlier, but rather marathons. So some of the key lessons that we learned is that it has to be clear and effective organizational and governance structures within this consortia, high quality and efficient scientific review processes, mechanisms to effectively track the alumni, and effective monitoring and learning processes have to be in place. And then finally, some of the key challenges, I just want to mention the issue of sustainability. Again, not very novel, not very new, because it's been mentioned before. But how do you sustain these programs? First of all, you have to see it as a long-term project, not a short-term project. And I think we have to think about ways to sustain this program beyond the 5 years or 3 years of funding that we get. In our case, for example, the Deltas programs, as some of you know, have been disrupted significantly because of challenges with the funding between the funders and the platform through which we were funded. And so we have had this gap in funding, and it'll be really interesting, I think, to hear what has happened to some of the Deltas programs in terms of sustainability because of the cut in funding. So what are some sustainability and the programs for sustainability are very key, and we need to figure out that, and also to have a long-term view. Again, one of the problems, I think, in my opinion, I'm going to stop in 30 seconds, is that even with the Deltas program and even with the renewal of the Deltas program, for example, we went, in our case, for example, from a program that was funded to the tune of about 11 million US dollars to $4.3 million, which means there was about it's a third in funding. So all of a sudden you have a program that is very vibrant, and then you go to a program that is actually is struggling even to sustain the staff that you had developed and the critical mass that you had developed. So we think we need to think about these sustainability issues. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tombe. And please hold your desire for coffee. we have just one more presentation. And I think it's also a very interesting presentation in that the focus is not your traditional disease, is looking at how we build capacity for statistics. And it's my pleasure to welcome Professor Jude Ingbo. I hope I pronounce your name right. Yes. Okay.
Thanks a lot, Sam. My name is Judy Gumbo. I am the CARTA focal person for Wits University, and I'll be presenting on behalf of the CARTA Secretariat, I guess because of my proximity to the meeting venue. So yeah, I'm representing the Consortia for Advanced Research and Training in Africa, which is CARTA. CARTA was designed to be an African-based, African-led initiative to build, thank you very much, to build and strengthen capacity of African universities to produce well-trained and skilled researchers and scholars in Africa. Initially, or from the onset, it was designed to be a 20-year intervention, mainly to enhance capacity of African universities to lead globally competitive research and training programs, create networks of locally trained, internationally recognized scholars, and build vibrant, viable, sustainable, multidisciplinary research hubs at African universities. So the CARTA program is made up of 4 African research institutes across the continent, 8 universities, and 9 northern partners. It is led jointly by directors at Wits University in Johannesburg and APHRC in Kenya. It has a secretariat also at APHRC in Kenya, where that coordinates the entire consortium in terms of the activities that it provides across its partner institutions. The CARTA program has also evolved over time. Initially, from the onset, the focus was around doctoral training and creating a collaborative training programs in public and population health across the partner institutions, and also to strengthen infrastructure for training and research in its partner institutions. The intensity of these varied over time, with continued training of doctoral candidates across the partner institutions, now adding the element of institutionalizing some of the lessons from the previous phase in this partner institution, such as having joint advanced seminars that was originally provided and coordinated by the CARTA program, but now decentralizing to the partner institutions to begin to use this curriculum to train PhD students and graduates, post-graduation. And also securing the future of the graduates through provision of doctoral programs as part of the sustainability plan. In its current form, CARTA, it's focused at maintaining a pipeline of high quality early career researchers, doctoral and postdoctoral candidates, creation of research hubs that would focus on different research areas as part of its capacity building in the various institutions. Already we've seen how people trained in different areas such as malaria, TB, HIV have also evolved into doing other things. The CARTA program have also experienced the same thing. More recently with COVID, where CARTA fellows who are trained mostly on other topics that are not COVID related, but had significant impact in terms of publications that they produce in a very short space of time to contribute to the response to the epidemic. In terms of its theory of change, right at the top, it hopes to become an African public universities to make African public universities become centers of research excellence that impact on society. And to do that, like we've heard from other presentations, is really to create a critical mass of researchers and to create a research supportive and responsive institution. To do this, it has a few objectives, 4 of them specifically: maintaining a pipeline of early career researchers, enhancing community engagement, creating the research hubs, and mainstreaming the interventions of the CARTA program, And some of the interventions are listed under activities, such as a PhD joint advanced seminars, postdoctoral awards, graduate workshops, co-design of interventions, becoming an evidence broker, also conducting situation analysis, stakeholder fora that it organizes, and co-designing research, agenda and strategy for Africa. In terms of outcomes, at the end of the program, we hope to create research leaders through the pipeline and the tap constantly flowing by creating skilled early career researchers, established research teams, conducive training and research environment, and quality scientific research and engagement activities as well. And all this will be hinged around creating a critical mass that you've heard other Delta's partners talk about already. In terms of output, in 11 years of the CATA program, we have given out about 245 PhD fellowships. We have lost about 20 of them. We have 225 of them who are active, and 137 have graduated, 73 postdocs, and in terms of distribution by gender, unlike concerns raised about gender balance between males and females, a majority of the CATA fellows are actually females. And a big part of this is that part of CATA's strategy has a number of activities and programs and support initiatives to ensure that to support women through the program. One of them is increasing the age entry limit for women, so that when women stabilize later in life after childbearing and all that, they are able to come into a PhD program and be supported. And CATA also provides child support programs at strategic times in the course of the PhD program. So this encourages women to come into the program and also excel through it. We've talked about students that have dropped out of the program, but our retention rate is as high as 92%, which by every standard is quite competitive and impressive. Average time to completion for the PhD program is about 54 months, which is a little over 4 years. Peer-reviewed publications produced by the fellows in the program as at June this year, it was about 2,700, but I believe it's over 3,000 now. The fellows themselves have raised over $27 million in external grants. The fellows themselves, not the consortium. 37 fellows have also been promoted to various other positions, postgraduates. We have a few of them now who are associate professors, who are deans of various schools within their universities. So 72 fellows have been given other responsibilities, including administrative responsibilities within their universities and governments. And also to mention that the majority of these fellows are also retained in Africa. And we also have mechanisms to keep tracking them. As much as I can remember, I know only one fellow out of the 245 who is based in Chicago. So the majority of them are indeed in Africa. So similar to what has been mentioned, the success factors, enablers of success is really about building strong partnerships, equity and inclusivity, good governance, as we have a very strong secretariat that coordinates the activities of all partners, but also bringing them together to work as a body. And the flexibility of our funders have also been very useful to evolve with our needs based on negotiating repurposing of funds to ensure that we meet our current needs and being more responsive to what the fellows need. What we have conceived here as challenges, I almost see them as situational awareness and threats to the program, which the program is also responding quite strongly through a number of mechanisms to address some of these issues. I already mentioned how what we see as delay due to COVID-19, for instance, is something that we have found to be very useful in terms of the contribution of the CATA fellows to the COVID-19 response. Registration issues in the universities, ethics approval, and some of these things delay our students. And in terms of limited visibility and uptake of the gains of the program, we are also making efforts in terms of the evidence website I will share in a minute. and also through that particular website, we are able to showcase the work being done by our fellows, translate research into tangible evidence, and showcase some of the innovations for uptake by the various users of science and innovation. And in terms of slow mainstreaming of the project, we are increasingly developing programs or increasingly rolling out the mainstreaming of the CATA program in partner institutions. But interestingly, the partner institutions are being more proactive in absorbing most of the CATA program innovations. Wits University, for instance, the new strategic plan for postgraduate training is almost entirely based on the CATA model for training postgraduate students. In terms of lessons learned, I think I've talked about a few of them also. Having committed focal people in the universities, monitoring and evaluation, committed program management at the secretariat and the directors, and a robust governance system and policies that we are constantly updating with time to be more responsive to needs have all been very instrumental in the program's success. Okay. So that's the CATA evidence website.
Evidence project improves the visibility of data, evidence, and innovations of CARTA fellows and other public and population health research throughout sub-Saharan Africa. The site is set up to eventually facilitate policy discussions, identify centers of excellence to foster synergies, and find collaborators throughout the region, all to improve health and development in Africa. Simply access our bibliometric dashboard. Filtering out specific data, and getting a snapshot of the research content, like how many times a specific university and individuals have been cited, or look for certain keyword clusters in CARTA Fellows publications in certain countries, or with or without certain authors, to identify experts and expertise, or areas for capacity building. You name it, there are many ways to drill down and find specific research related to CARTA Fellows and other researchers in Africa. Each section here can also be found in the main menu bar as well. You can sort and filter through our entire database of publications. And simply click here to read any of them. Or you can select all, or select specific entries, and download the information as an Excel file with just one click. Or focus only on research abstracts. Filter down to specific subjects and review their summaries at a glance.
Yeah, so, okay. Yeah, so in closing, the website was originally designed to manage the impact and contribution of CATA fellows, but it has evolved into becoming a data and evidence management platform for Africa. And I encourage you all to visit the site. And we're also planning to officially launch it on the 2nd of December. And I'll be happy to share with people the link to participate in the event for those who choose to. Thank you very much.
My question goes, do you have, for the presenters, do you support and encourage clinical practice training for interested individuals or for those who want to support research with a clinical background?
So training for clinically trained individuals.
Hi, my name is Corin. I'm from Task in South Africa. And I think my question maybe links to yours. I see a lot of support for beautiful programs for PhDs, masters, and all of those, but there's a whole team behind a PI and a clinical trial. How much commercial training do you give that people can set up a trial, can do feasibility, site selection, visits, do the trial, report on AEs and SAEs, and actually that on the floor training?
So training for clinical trials, research management, and the supporting auxiliary activities beyond the technical part. Yeah.
So you did emphasize on domestic, but I didn't hear the solutions that you're offering. What are you doing to really reach out to our local governments on this area? Then one last one, which is a bit sensitive. What is ailing the region? Because as far as I know, there's a point where we had the African Academies of Sciences where funding was really, pumped through that. Then all of a sudden I keep reading these funny stories. Could you comment on that? Because I guess that is where, the real problem is about the region. Thank you.
I can say this with the comment around the issues that went between the African Academy of Sciences and the hosting of the deltas. Often sometimes, when people are hosted in the beginning, there's good relationship because there's a lot of enthusiasm, but sometimes the MOUs are not very clear. And when the MOUs are coming to an end, sometimes you get challenges in renewing those MOUs based on the original way that they were designed. Initially, they're often based on goodwill because everybody is enthusiastic. And then as the progression happens with the actual activities happening, then as you examine those MOUs in more details, sometimes there are challenges. So I'm not laying blame on any side, but it's something to be aware of. If you are trying to host your initiative in another institution, initially everybody is happy, there's money, but when you start, working along, then you start realizing that the original MOUs may not have catered for everything. So without putting accusation on any side, it's just to say it's important in your net, and it's not just for MOUs. With hosting, even with your networks, and we'll be talking about that in the next session. Good. The government one, I'll ask the other side. You may have picked one or two areas you want to address.
I'll address the one on. I think with the issues with the African Academy of Sciences and the funding and the disruption in funding. I do think that. Good intentions don't always follow. I think what we need is good governance and good governance, or even of funding bodies in Africa. And sometimes I think things are done quickly because the intentions are good to support African institutions, but I don't think the governance structures are put in place. So you end up with a gap where there is a huge problem of governance and in the way that the organizations that are funding are overseen. And that I think, personally, I think that's part of the reason that led to the challenge that we have now with the African Academy of Sciences. Just to quickly address the issue of language, I think this is a weakness we have definitely recognized within the Sante network. For example, we had all English-speaking partners, but obviously TB and HIV are not just a problem for Anglophone Africa. So what we have done in Deltas 2.0 is that we have extended our reach now to include an Francophone partner in Cameroon. This is not enough, but at least it's a step in the right direction to try and extend now to start engaging Francophone partners. And we want to actually use that as a way to reach out to other partners so that we can become stronger and start overcoming these challenges, and even have funding mechanisms to address the issue of language challenge, whether it means offering courses to train people to do this cross language training, or even go to other sites to do the research. These kind of mechanisms and activities that we can use to address that problem of the barriers.
Okay, I'll talk to the issue of the focus of the CATA program. So the CATA program, for instance, is very deliberate about training more PhDs that are staff of various universities, so they can train more PhDs and master students within their home institutions. And it's also very deliberate about creating more capacity for public and population health. So the selection of beneficiaries or fellows into the program is strictly on those who are working in public and population health-related research, and they can come from anywhere. They could be from law, from the arts, from anywhere in the university, because it also promotes a very multidisciplinary training of a cohort of people from beginning to the end, from your very basic understanding of research to more complex understanding of research, to becoming research leaders and administrators. So at the end of the day, you're able to create this whole and completely trained individual who becomes a research leader in time through the postdoctoral support that is also provided and mentoring postgraduate as well. So it's end-to-end training of university staff who are working on public and population health related research.
So the last two, one was on the clinical training. Yes, we do have systems where we're training clinicians, but also in addition to training clinicians, we have, and I think Thumbi, you'll have a similar system where in addition to the academic training, you have the generic or the soft skill training, and that includes things like grant writing, project management, whether it's clinical trials, public and community engagement. So all these are in addition, and that's what I was insisting on, the fact that we are not only focusing on technical training of how to look down a microscope, but developing people who have the capacity to manage research. And just a very quick one on language, we have also, as ideal, included now Mnager as a part of it. So I'm now taking French classes. Yeah, I think we are running out of time. We really have to, yeah. So this is really interesting, and thank you very much, everybody, for such engagement and such enthusiasm.
So welcome back. So our journey is still on, and we are glad for what we've seen and heard. So our nice adventure goes on. So now we're going to, I'm speaking on behalf of Michelle because we've given her hard time and her voice is gone. So yeah, she's appointed me to lead this session. So now we are going to invite our colleagues for the data sharing. Research data sharing. You know, today you cannot conduct research if you put your data in the drawer. Data should be put in freezers -80 to be used by others. This is how research can prosper. So it's important to really make good use of our data and share them for more research to be conducted. So I'm pleased to invite the team of EDO and also team from MRC, MRC, by Lamin, Badou, and Laura to speak on behalf of the team of data sharing. So if you are ready, I think it is by Lamin speaking. Yes, so the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Hopefully everybody's had their coffee, their tea, and ready for the next session. So I'll be talking about Health Data Research Africa, a term that we've come up with for this particular project. But basically it's a data sharing platform for Africa. And that is what we'll be pitching to you today, telling you about the work that's been done so far and the indulgement we would like from the networks of excellence and across Africa for this to be a success. So my team are here, some of my team are here. Badou is here in the audience, likewise Laura is. Elizabeth is somewhere on site. She couldn't make it here today, but yes, we're all here. So basically, why are we talking about Health Data Research Africa? So we've been talking about data sharing for quite some time. You know, everybody knows the importance. So I'm not really here to do the same run again, but I'm saying, why do we want a platform for Africa? That's really what we're pitching to you guys. So obviously it's to increase scientific discovery, to improve health, and also to answer more questions, but mainly questions that are coming from the African continent. And this can only be done faster with existing data, of course. So we want to also increase the value of African data and use this for more publications to support training as well, and link all of this to academic credit. We know that this is something that is really a question and is really a concern for researchers who are working in the field, but we want to ensure that their credit can be linked back to them. And this can be done by DOI's document object identifiers, which I'll talk a bit more about later. Of course, we don't want it only to be about tick boxes, about meeting funder requirements and also, you know, publication requirements. No, but that's also part of it. I mean, you all know that this is now a key element of getting some funding, making sure that you will share that data. I'm going to prevent data loss. Okay, having a repository where all data is stored, controlled, makes it easier for us to keep that data and not lose it by individual researchers keeping hold of them. I want to facilitate the use of data, pooled analysis, you know, the general advantages and benefits of data sharing. And also, we want to protect the interest of the patients or the participants who this research is conducted on. And all of this with an African-led governance model. And I think this is the key. So moving on, a few answers to some of the questions that you may all have. Okay, yes, we want to have a repository that allows all kinds of data, not just specific data, as we have some already on the continent, but they're very sort of therapeutic area specific or disease area specific. Data will be governed, data will be protected throughout, and it's controlled access and not open, okay? So this is also something that people always say, well, I don't want my data open to the, you know, to the entire research community, but it's shared, but it's controlled, you know, within your own parameters as dictated by a committee. So there's also a need to have a legal entity who will be the interface with those requesting access to the data, signing the agreements. This legal entity, we have that based in Africa. MRCG Gambia will serve as that legal entity so that it's easier to sign these contracts, and also will provide more confidence for some of the researchers to share their data within Africa. Okay, our vision, it will not be owned by any one institution, by any one network. Okay, One at a Time is leading this, is starting this, but the ultimate objective is that we invite all the networks of excellence to come on board, not just even the NOEs, other bodies within Africa who have data to share to join on this. This is the vision. The federated repository is the approach we would want to have. That is, data sits within the networks of excellence, and you will see this a bit more in detail in later slides, and that they're controlled within those environments, but this is all subjected to one central administrative sort of body that manages how access is given to the data, how data is submitted, and the likes. So it's all about working together. It's all about delivering on the data sharing principles that some of the work that has been done already by Alert and Pandora, we want to build on that framework. We are part of Alert. We've been working as a work package as part of Alert, and we want to build on that work and not basically reinvent the wheel. So this is how it's basically going to work. So step one there, I don't know whether my laser works. Yeah. So you can see there, researchers will sign the terms of submission. It can work here as well. I doubt it, but anyway, never mind. So researchers sign a terms of submission and send the data to a secure storage. Okay, and as you can see there, down at the bottom, you see the different networks of excellence as an example, and this could be many more, but that's an example, data sitting within those NOEs and controlled. The terms of submission are signed, the metadata, this is the data that describes the data, basically, what's in this data set. And this is what will be published to the central repository. And this is the inventory that the public-facing website will show, so that people interested in the data sets we have can see what we have, not necessarily the data sets, but just the metadata to describe what we have in the repository. So then we will assign a DOI to each of these data sets so that this can then be linked back to the researcher. So in a nutshell, that's how data will be submitted into the repository. As for how data will be accessed, researchers will use the website, the front-facing inventory, or the HDR website rather, to be able to look for data. And this is the metadata that was submitted. And after that, they can apply to have access. But this will go through to a data access committee, which is made up of key researchers within the continent, from the different networks of excellence, who will review and approve, and then allow for the agreement to be signed between the researcher and the institution, who is the legal entity managing that as the administrative office. And then from that, data are shared from the different areas where that data is coming from, depending on what's been requested. And that will then be pulled together and then shared to the researcher. And obviously the resulting papers cites the different DOIs, which will then be linked back and give basically recognition back to the initial researcher who generated that data. And obviously the output of that is your academic metrics will go up as a result. So these are some of the key components that it's built on. And this is, number one is equitable data access. Of course, I mean, we've heard this word quite a lot this morning, but it's a principle I think we're all quite interested in, especially when it comes to data sharing. We have a strong, transparent governance. It's led by different researchers or different individuals from different networks of excellence, and it can even go beyond that as it grows. Accountable data access, everything is structured and controlled in such a way that everything is documented. Things can be linked back to who requested for what reason, and what they've done as a result from that data. I want to enable collaboration and capacity strengthening, of course. This is key. And as we make this a federated repository, it allows data managers sitting in these NOEs to be strengthened, because they will be subjected to some of the data sharing processes. They will need to administer the requests. And as a result, they get engaged. And from this engagement, you can really build the capacity as a result. Sorry, so just to show there at the bottom there, this is really how the framework operates. You have the platform host, which will be based in the MRC, and this will be responsible for hosting the data and signing the agreements. This is simply because the infrastructure is there already. The website is being developed, and you need a legal entity, of course. The data access committee, we're in the process of this, but this they'll work mainly based on the terms of reference that has been developed, and also some guidelines as well. So these are all being developed together with our collaborators, and there's a steering committee who will be responsible for driving this this platform going forward. So some of the draft criteria for data access. So what will priority be given for access to this data? So these are some key pointers. It's not limited to this, but these are some of the key ones. Okay, so first of all, it's led by or includes partnerships, collaborative partnerships with the data generators themselves. Obviously, preference will be given to that. Secondly, preference will be given to those requests where research capacity will be developed in countries of the data origin, where the data was generated from. And also requests that would address a knowledge gap and avoid duplication of research work. And also will be of value to the communities of the data origin, I think key, and also will benefit the wider public health. Thanks. So some challenges. I think in the first goes, yes, everybody knows it, reticence to share data. Okay, there's definitely that, we all know. And that's why we're attempting to answer the questions by providing the platform for that. Investment and resources needed. We need the resources. I mean, as you can clearly see with this model, the resources are needed to sustain this going forward. Volunteers are needed from the various committees to contribute data into the platform. I mean, it can exist, infrastructure is there, without the data, it's not going to work. So we need data to be contributed to the platform. Long-term support. I think this is critical, because what we have here is an opportunity, and we have already started something. We're not coming empty-handed. We have started something, and we have set up a sharing platform, set up the governance structure around it. We have some funding from UKRI to start that, and some funding from One at a Time. What happens next? We're going to need some plans to be put in place to keep this going. And I think the starting is all good, but we want this to keep on going, and we'll need support from the funding bodies to sustain this going forward. So next steps, just to quickly go through that, I'm getting signals that time is up. Plans with the EDCTP Networks of Excellence, they're here. We want your feedback. We've already discussed this with some of you already, but we want your input. We need your input. I mean, we're not in this alone. We're just sort of kickstarting it, but we want your ideas. The steering committee, data access committees, we need very good people to volunteer to be part of it. We need to set it up and get them going. We need to hire the secretariat staff to get the platform started. We need to complete the terms of reference, get the data access guidelines going on. Sign-offs from the various management committees from the different NOEs. We need that. We need to secure funding, launch the website, invite contributions, and engage the group so that we can extend this across the continent. So I would like to thank the funders, of course, who made this possible, also our partners. Obviously, this is started, as I said, by One at a Time, one of the NOEs, but this is an initiative we want all the other NOEs to join in with us. We want your ideas, we want your contributions, but thanks to UKRI, to EDCTP, of course, without them, this couldn't happen, but also to our collaborators from University of Oxford and also UCT Cape Town. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Lamin, for this brilliant presentation, especially for keeping in the time frame. So we are going to give you the floor for questions. You see, there are so many questions. So you can sit here. Don't run away. So, okay, let's start here. Yes, of course.
So thank you very much for that very nice presentation. You mentioned the fact that there is infrastructure at the MRCG Gambia for this data repository. Well, I want to say something a little bit too sensitive. You know, one of the excuses which is given for having servers of research data out of Africa is power cuts, lack of capacity to manage the infrastructure, and yeah. So what are the dispositions that have been put in place to ensure that we don't get such an excuse? And is there any plans, are there any plans to have backup servers? If yes, where are they? It would be very important to know that. Because I'm saying so because, yes, the reticence to share data is real. And one of the reasons why the people who generate the data don't want to share, it's because of lack of trust on the custodians. So if you can guarantee that the servers are going to be in MRC, continuous power supply, a backup on the continent with limited API access from out of Africa, then you're going to increase the wish to share data. Thank you.
Great. Yeah. So
Thank you.
You go ahead.
I just want to echo on the previous speaker. So your presentation was very excellent. And I think the issue that you raised is very great, and we appreciate on that. So I have two questions. So one, I just want to see to ask if it's the same situation IDO and the health data receives application, because I see the key staff, some belong to the IDO if it's the same situation. So the second question, so we appreciate it. So we as a network, we are going to have this discussion. So my question is, we're talking about the project result. As you know, we as a network, we're not conducting clinical trials, but of course, within our institution, we have clinical trial running, which is part of the network. And then they have on their policy, something like that. So
Are you diverse, or we just want to put all these together? What type of information, what type of data, if the project results and things like that? So maybe we can discuss on that issue. Thank you.
Okay. Shall I wait for all the questions?
Are you going to?
Or maybe let
answer these two questions then.
Okay.
Because if we get more of them, yeah.
So, okay. So our first question. So let me just make a clarification about MRC's role and the server, the central server that's there is to house the metadata. And this is basically the inventory of what we have across the net, across the whole platform. So it's not necessarily the data sets. There might be data sets sitting in MRC, but most likely there will be MRC generated data sets or data sets from other institutions who are comfortable sharing their data and keeping it at MRC. But why we say it's a federated platform is because other data sets will sit where they're generated. Obviously, there are consequences for that in terms of managing. And that's why we say, I mean, we need to support to be able to strengthen these networks of excellence, to be able to do the management, the infrastructure, and make sure that things are up and running. Okay, yes, we have a very reliable data center in MRC, but it's not purposely to house all the data sets. It's just to house the inventory. Now, in terms of, remind me about your second question. Yeah, backup servers. So yes, this is why we're engaging with these NOEs. This is not all driven by OneTAM. And we have other sites, other institutions across all the EDCTP networks that may be strong enough to serve as a backup site. And it's just simply a matter of engagement, discussing and setting it up somewhere in East Africa or South Africa or somewhere. So that's basically what we're looking to have in place. I couldn't really quite get your first question, but on the second question about what kind of data, we're really talking about the actual data sets from the clinical trials, the observational studies. That's the main that's the main sort of output that we're after. That's what resides in the repository. Obviously, you can have associated documentation as well that will help explain or understand what the study is about. This is also interesting to have, but it's really about a data set and accompanying data dictionaries that will explain what's in the data set. That is what we're looking to house within the repository. I couldn't quite get your first question. Shall I? I mean, EDO is based in Oxford. We are partnering with them. We did start this partnership with them in the beginning of the project to learn from them, of course, because this is something they're experts on. And we use some of that to build HDR Africa. But what we're saying here is an African-led, African-hosted platform within the continent. And I think that does go a long way in building some of the trust that was mentioned by our colleague here. And that's one of the big reasons why it's hosted and based on the continent, physically, the data, okay? It's run, the legal entity signing the contract is based within the continent, okay? And the networks of excellence that are contributing data are based within the continent. So I think that's the difference, really. EDO can do all of that, but most likely your data is going to sit somewhere in the EU, which our colleagues will not be very happy about. So I think that's the main difference, and I think that's why it's housed here. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So we're discussing with Laura just earlier on.
Yeah.
And I was looking at this whole idea and trying to compare it with the biorepositories for specimen that are all over the place. And once you benefit from samples from somebody else, it's easier for you to also share. So it's the same thing with the data. But in behind that, I know that for instance, we have a biorepository at the UVRI. It's been running for years. And the guys that are managing it now are looking at the earlier samples and they're thinking we need to discard this because they've been kept for donkey years. Nobody has even ever requested to be used. Probably the researchers that conducted the studies have moved on to many other things. So I'm wondering, with these data repositories that we're talking about, the utility is there in theory, but are there plans to actually support people to exploit that data once it's been reposited? So for instance, maybe it will be in your MOUs, for how long do you keep the data? So data that is collected in 2023, if we're in 2050, what happens to the things? Because then there would be that thing of perpetually storing samples. I mean, data. I think there was a time where there was a scare that research is going to stop because, the West would come, do data, ship samples to the US. And the samples are there. And I've been at a meeting where people are saying, please, we have too many samples, come and do research on them. And actually, nobody is actually responding.
Yeah.
So how do we balance this, making sure we store data that will actually be used later, against, just storing for the sake of storing? Thank you.
So first, I'll just say that's why we need you. I mean, this is exactly what I don't have all the answers. We don't have all the answers. And this is why we need your contribution. I mean, EACCR and others likewise, you'll contribute very useful ideas to the setting up of this platform. So yes, come on board. Sorry, I don't really have an answer for you, but it's a very valid point, and I think it's something we need to discuss.
Yeah. So, and I think that's a really important point. We have the same issues. We have a lot of students, masters, PhD all over the country who are looking for data they can work on, but they are unable to access the data because they don't know that it's there. And I think that's what the platform will serve. And so I think it's in utilizing, it's both training people to use, but also really just broadcasting that it's there and this is what it contains, so that, students from all over the continent can use. So that's one. I think the second one was a comment around where the data is being stored. And in a sense, yes, I know symbolically having it in a physical server in Africa has a symbolic meaning, but in reality, these things are in the cloud and in a sense, the place, I think for me, the more important is the governance of who accesses the data and how it is governed. And I think, and the one I didn't hear you mention maybe is the involvement of non-scientific community, or if you like, public sector in the representation of the data governance. Remember that ultimately the ownership of the data, although it's the custodianship is embedded on the researcher, this data is owned by the community. It's coming from the community. And I don't know what your community and public engagement around this data initiative is. Maybe you might mention in a bit.
Yeah, my colleague wants to answer that, so I'll allow him.
So thank you very much, Sam, for that suggestion about where actually the data is hosted. Doesn't matter nowadays. It could be in the cloud. So what matters is the governance. Yes, that's a lovely answer. Now, apart from that, we're talking about the last question was about.
Yeah, apart from that, the last concern was about the public sector. Now, in the governance model of the Data Access Committee and the Steering Committee, it constitutes scientists and researchers within the networks of excellence, but we also invited people who have scientific background within the public sector, like, for example, from governments, and also from international bodies like WAHO, which is West African Health Organization, and possibly WHO, to be unofficial members of the Data Access Committee. And we also like to have data experts or statisticians who would be of value in the Data Access Committee, as well as ethical, committees people. So all this is to give value, to have a wider representation of not only scientists and researchers within the network of excellence. Thank you.
Thank you. I can see it is exciting, but I was told a few minutes ago that our time is exhausted. So let's keep the discussion outside networking, emails. And as you said, we need a contribution of all of us to really bring this project into being. Thank you again for this brilliant presentation.
So the next session, we are going to now, we've been talking about networks of excellence, consortia, and what we're going to do in the next session is to examine some of the issues that emerge within the management, within issues of diversity, inclusivity, and also just thinking about how you scale your network. So one of the things that we noticed is that often the way networks come together is that they are in response to a funding call. And the PI is often the person who has a higher sort of scientific credentials, but we don't necessarily have a lot of interrogation. Okay, now it's changing. There's a bit more emphasis on research, culture, and inclusivity and diversity. But traditionally, a lot of the drive was around, does this person have loads and loads of papers, and therefore they'll be the sort of PI and leader for the network without really taking consideration around issues of leadership, issues of management, and how their capacity to navigate all these challenges. So we are going to have 3 talks, and then we're going to have a bit of a panel discussion around them. And the first one is a video. Unfortunately, Nadia, who has been working with the learning research project and examining issues around the Delta's consortia, was unable to get her visa on time, so she'll be presenting from a video. We are on? Okay. And she'll be looking at consortia management. Go on.
My name is Nadia Tego from Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. It's a pleasure to join you, even though unfortunately I couldn't be there in person. It's a pleasure to be able to join you using these means, and I hope that the symposium has been going well. I'm focusing my talk on a framework for managing health research capacity strengthening consortia. I'm sure we can tell from the many experiences that have been shared by both the EDCTP and the Delta's consortia that there are huge investments in strengthening research capacity across Africa and other continents. I'm sure from the outputs that they have shared, we can tell the volume of investments in such initiatives, and often many of these initiatives are implemented by consortia or networks, which are made up of different institutions coming together to address a certain set of goals. And the question to ask ourselves is whether these investments are producing the optimum capacity results. What we sought to do, or what the question that we took a closer look at, and this is myself and other researchers. We have Sam, who should be there with you and now, who is representing me. So direct all your questions to him. But the question that we took a closer look at is how consortium management practices enable or hinder capacity strengthening outcomes. And we did this within the Delta's framework, which is made up of 11 programs. We took a look at the management practices, thinking, and we actually did some more in-depth work with 3 as case studies as well. And there were quite a number of things that we learned from engaging with the Delta's consortia. First of all, the kind of management structures and processes that are used by consortia are largely similar, not just in the Delta's framework, but even across other consortia. Because prior to this work, we undertook a systematized literature review, which also gave us a similar outputs. So you find that most consortia will go through a partner selection process, developing their goals and activities, assigning roles and responsibilities, setting up governance processes and structures, allocating resources, managing partners. So have partner management systems, as well as ways by which they coordinate and monitor their sets of activities. The differences across consortia is the kind of strategies that are adopted. And these are influenced by very many different things. It can be influenced by what even motivated the consortium to be established in the first place, funders' expectations, the previous experiences of the leaders or other members as well, and how consortium members even perceive what research capacity is. So one of the key findings is the fact that management decisions or decision making in consortia is not as straightforward as may be envisioned, and that leaders often encounter tensions between different options when they are making decisions. And so I'll be sharing a few of these tensions. So for instance, in selecting partners, leaders have to consider whether to choose partners with existing capacity, so what they would call stronger partners, or those who may not have current capacity but who need the capacity strengthening opportunities that the consortium is offering. So these are some of the options, and while some consortia may choose to go with strong partners so they can deliver and be more competitive for future funding, some would take a mix of partners so that the purpose or the aim of capacity strengthening will be brought to bear. When determining goals, do consortia take or consider goals that address the needs of each partner? So we have each partner having a set of goals and all of them are put together, or common goals, so a small number of goals that apply to all. These are some of the decisions. So do partners choose goals that are easy to deliver? One consortium will tell you that training researchers is easy. You can train them within a certain period of time. You can count and report on them at the end of the program, compared to tackling systems. So if, for instance, the need of a partner is an internet connection framework, is that something that a consortium is willing to take on? So these are what we call the efficiency versus effectiveness tensions. In instituting governance, are we looking for a quick way of making decisions? So for one consortium, the number of partners were so many and they didn't want a large management board, so they limited the number of partner representatives on the board. Is that the decision to take? Or because of inclusiveness, we would want everybody at the table in terms of assigning roles or allocating, assigning roles. Do we assign roles to those who can do it? Or do we consider the fact that even for partners who may not have the capacity to deliver quickly, the opportunity of being given that responsibility and delivering on it is a learning by doing process that strengthens their capacity in various ways? When we are managing partners, do we choose a centralized system where funds are managed from the lead institution and activities are directed from the lead institution only, or a decentralized system where each partner has its program of work and its allocated funds that they manage at the local level? When resources are being allocated, and I will use researcher training as an example. So awarding of fellowships, do we use equality, equity, or excellence? So equality meaning each partner takes an equal number of fellowship opportunities, or equity meaning the partner that needs the most trained researchers will be given the most opportunities, or excellence where it's just purely merit. An open call is put out, applications come in, and those who are ranked high receive opportunities. So these are some of the tensions that funders, consortium leaders actually encounter in the decisions that they are forced to make. And we have actually published this work, and out of the learning from exploring these management practices, we came up with a framework for managing capacity strengthening consortia. So the full framework has been published here, and you can look it up later. But I will touch on some elements of the framework that tackle the three key components of the framework. So the first one is purpose. So we know that the consortium, because it's a capacity strengthening consortium, has the main aim of strengthening the capacity of all its members. So the thinking of what research capacity is has to be holistic, it has to be contextual, it has to take into consideration or account the context-specific needs of each partner, because the nature of capacity strengthening is such that it has to be context-specific, it is needs-based, and it is systemic. Capacity is demonstrated when all elements within a particular local system are working together to deliver a desired output. It is self-organizing, internally driven. And so it needs to take that into account. It can be externally triggered, but it needs self-organizing members within the local context to organize the capacity strengthening process themselves. That's when optimal capacity strengthening happens. The second set of principles is the fact that a consortium is a collaboration, and so collaborative principles like equity, power balance, inclusiveness have to be prioritized. So these are the two sets of principles that should guide consortium management decision making. And so when the need to choose one strategy over the other presents itself, it will be important for consortia to vet each of these strategies based on these principles that I've just talked about. So for instance, if we want to choose between a centralized system or a decentralized system, which one promotes capacity strengthening more? Which one promotes self-organizing? Which one promotes equity? Which one promotes inclusiveness? So these are the things that the framework is proposing that consortia do. And the framework has some questions that guides consortia to be able to assess their decision making and make decisions that promote capacity strengthening. And then when those decisions are made, and they need to be tracked so that feedback from the outcomes will be fed and would be used to improve decisions even within the same program or in future programs. So using the same example of centralized, decentralized, if partners in the decentralized system are sharing that the fact that they are managing components of the program or parts of the budget at the local level is strengthening their capacity to manage grants, to source for their own grants and manage it, that outcome has to feed back into decisions within the program as well as in future programs. And it's important to consider both tangible and intangible outcomes. Intangible in that even the way members are able to articulate their needs, members are able to negotiate at the management table. Those may be outcomes that may not necessarily be quantifiable or be reported back to the funder. But it's important to value the wide range of capacity outcomes and report them even when they are not part of the reporting checklist, and feed them back, because when funders are aware of some of these outcomes and it's important in capacity strengthening, they are able to give consortia the latitude to be able to spend resources and time building some of these capacity elements. So I'm going to end my talk by sharing a few recommendations that we have made towards promoting capacity strengthening through consortia. And this goes to funders, practitioners, members of consortia, and the wide range of actors within the field. That first of all, it's important to know that these tensions exist, that when decisions are being made, very many considerations are at play, and whenever one decision is made, it has a capacity implication. If you choose a centralized system, it has a capacity implication on the members of the consortium. So it's important for all actors to be aware. If funders are aware of this, they would, as I mentioned earlier, give implementers the latitude to make the right choices. That research capacity is not only technical skills, it's a broader set of skills. There are strategic skills, managerial skills, interactive skills. And so when designing health research capacity strengthening programs, when determining what reporting requirements are, when evaluating consortium performance, it's important to prioritize capacity strengthening and not just research outputs like numbers trained or publications that have been produced. And it is also important to accept that capacity strengthening is risky. And I say that because it tackles whole systems. We can't just pick and choose, train a number of researchers and place them within a certain context and expect that they would deliver. It tackles whole systems. It takes time, and the outputs cannot always be quantified. So it's important for all actors to be aware and allow for some of these processes to take their rightful course. And to know that consortium management processes are capacity strengthening mechanisms in their own right. Management processes, even getting a partner a certain amount of funds to manage themselves, go through the motions, sits at the consortium steering committee table. It's all capacity strengthening towards health research. And so it's important to be able to allocate resources, time, and more importantly, make it an explicit part of consortia plans and work packages, because it is a capacity strengthening mechanism. And finally, that funders should include in their guidelines some of these issues that we've talked about. Know that it's funder guidelines and funder requirements that most influences how consortia make decisions. And so when guidelines capture some of these issues that I've raised today, it empowers consortia to choose the management practices that promote capacity strengthening. And so as we go into the discussions after these presentations, it's important to think through your own experiences to see how it resonates with some of the things I've shared, and also to think about how to take some of these recommendations forward to enhance the field. Thank you.
Michelle, over to you to talk about geographic and gender inclusivity in capacity building.
Thank you, Sam. So my presentation is going to touch on gender and geographical inclusivity in capacity building, and I'll basically be focusing on how we can address this gender and diversity gaps in clinical research capacity. It's interesting to note that the gender representation on the panel of speakers is skewed. There are only 2 females. But we try. So I will briefly touch on EDCTP, who we are. I'll also touch on the disparities within the EDCTP portfolio, some of the causes of gender and regional gaps in research capacity, and also some of the steps taken by EDCTP to address these disparities. So who is EDCTP? So basically, we are a public-public partnership between institutions mandated by national governments in Europe and Sub-Saharan Africa, and we're supported by the European Union. Our mission is to enhance research capacity and accelerate the development of new or improved medical interventions for the identification, treatment, and prevention of poverty-related infectious diseases. And more recently, in the second program, we've included emerging and re-emerging diseases in Sub-Saharan Africa. Now, how we do this is that we support clinical trials. We also support projects that focus on strengthening the enabling environment that these clinical trials are conducted in. And we also support career development of fellows and research members within research teams. So some of the key observations from the EDCTP portfolio since 2003. So we've noted that our funding has significantly influenced the growth of clinical research infrastructure and human resources. However, and this is demonstrated actually by the increase in the number of fellows and the grant recipients who are holding senior scientific positions in Africa. We've also noticed that there's a rise in the number of sub-Saharan institutions that have built or upgraded facilities and also host these research teams that are now able to conduct clinical studies. But then we also noted that there still remains significant geographical disparities within our portfolio. We've seen that there's little involvement from Central and West Africa in the EDCTP funded research consortia. These are the large clinical trials, and also across the fellowships. And we've noted that when it comes to the level of emerging academic and research institutions, there's limited participation from East Africa, from East and Southern Africa. We've also noticed that there's gender imbalance. Majority of the grantees at the level of fellowships and coordinators of these large clinical trials were male. And this is because most of the times the applications we receive are mainly for the men. The ladies are just not submitting applications. And then in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, it highlighted the heterogeneity of the health research infrastructure, as well as the differences in preparedness capacity within and between countries and regions to respond and handle these health emergencies. Now, when we look at the geographical distribution of EDCTP clinical studies from 2014, we can see that actually this is an improvement, because in the first phase, there was this dark corridor that Leonard was talking about, and that was Central Africa. So I think we started to light it up. But then we still have issues when it comes to Angola. We don't have any clinical studies, and also in Chad. And this is also like when you compare it to South Africa, Kenya, and Tanzania, that's a huge difference, where we're going from 0 to other countries that have more than 60 clinical studies. And then when you look at the fellowship program, since 2014, we funded or rather awarded 205 fellowships that, as I mentioned before, focus on the career development of researchers across 26 sub-Saharan African countries. But then again, we see that Angola has no fellows, Chad has no fellows. We look at Benin only has 1 fellow. So we still have a lot of work to do. And then when you look at South Africa, there are about 44 fellows, Uganda has 32 fellows. So we still have a lot of work that needs to be done. Disappeared. So when you look at the gender equality in science, and this is, again, looking at the EDCTP portfolio, we've funded to date about 432 projects. And out of these 432 projects, 37% are led by females. When you look at the large-scale clinical trials, only 46 of the 140 clinical trials are being led by women. When we look at the fellowships, 79 are being led by females out of the 205. And then to date, we have trained 632 African academic trainees. These are the PhD and master students, and only 46% are female. Then when you look at on the secretariat level, how we conduct our business is that we try and make sure that our expert review committees, these are the reviewers who evaluate proposals, we try and make sure that there's a gender balance in these committees. But more often than not, we are not able to achieve a 50-50 balance. And that's because it's very difficult to find female reviewers who are experts in specific scientific fields. So we found that at the end of the day, only 39% of the members of most of the expert review committees are female. So we all know that gender affects all facets of life, and the world of health research is not an exception. The proportion of women among researchers is increasing, but they're still significantly underrepresented. And according to UNESCO, women only account for 28% of researchers worldwide. By the way, I apologize in advance if I make some of the men uncomfortable. Don't come for me. So, hey, I have to, you never know. So women publish, it's been noted that women publish fewer research papers. They're underrepresented in lead authorship positions, and they're less likely than men to collaborate internationally, and also less likely than men to collaborate across sectors on research. So why are women underrepresented in research capacity? Now I'm going to cite explanations from literature. This is not me. Don't have that, please. So there's a loss of women from research, the research career path, and this is known as the leaky pipeline. And this is because of several challenges. Most of these challenges cited are some of them without merit, some of them controversial, but some of them actually contribute to this leaky pipeline. And some of them are like the glass ceiling, the glass cliff, lack of parental leave, and also family responsibilities. Then we find that women researchers are generally less mobile than men. There's a slower pace of advancement by women compared to men in research institutions, and this is also due to lack of policies. There's a persistent bias in favor, again, don't count for me, persistent bias in favoring of hiring men, offering them higher salaries, startup funds, authorship, and mentoring support compared to women. Then there's a Matilda effect, where women authors are associated with lower perceived quality of publication and interest in collaboration compared to men. And yes, and then, it's said that women researchers specialize less than men. Now, how are we going to work on closing the gender gap? These are some of the possible solutions. So we know that women bring new ideas, perspective, and they add to the collective intelligence. So we need to look at policy changes to promote gender equality in the scientific research workforce. We need to ensure that we can explore new career pathways by which women can advance in research and rise to leadership positions. We also need to look at legislation. We need legislation to ensure that women can achieve full and effective participation in scientific research. And we also have to have specific strategies to balance gender representation in research teams and policy and decision-making groups to improve research quality. Now, what are some of the possible causes of regional gaps in research capacity? It's been seen that most institutions in sub-Saharan Africa, or rather, most regions are at war. There's political instability, poverty plays a huge role, and also there's weak political commitment. Language barrier has often been cited as one of the possible causes of regional gaps. We have the Francophone speaking and the Lusophone speaking countries who actually are not well represented when it comes to research. Then there's a lack of collaboration. Now, we've seen that researchers work in silos. There's limited sharing of rare facilities and expertise. There's weak South-South mentorship programs, and most of the South-North collaboration follow historical links. And as I mentioned before, this excludes many potential researchers and sites. Then there's research ownership. It's still driven by Northern partners, especially the large clinical trials. And this is something we've seen across the EDCTP portfolio. Then we look at the institutional lack of capacity. We lack organizational policies that talk about or rather address equity, gender equity. There's insufficient and irregular funding. There's poor physical or technological infrastructure for research. And then we have the staff issues, which is high staff turnover because of said low salaries. And this actually contributes to most of the research institutions not being sustainable or rather fall behind when it comes to research. But as much as there's a lot of work that has been done to strengthen these research institutions, there's still some of them still remain small in size, scope, and influence, and they have limited geographic reach. So how do we close some of the regional gaps? So some of these funding opportunities need to be advertised in all major languages. We need to move away from colonial affiliation. We need organizational policies. We need to focus on providing local research capacity building. We need to knowledge map. We need to have partnerships and collaboration, and this needs to be in a systematic manner. We need to address national research priority needs, and we need to strategically promote collaboration and coordination among existing networks to conduct research in priority health issues in Africa. Now, can EDCTP go beyond its current practice? We try and do this by looking at it from two angles. We have the gender issue. So what we've done is that we have the Scientific Advisory Committee that has established a working group on gender. And what they do or have been tasked with is to scope what other researchers are what other research funders are tracking and doing. And then on the EDCTP Secretariat level, we try, as I mentioned before, we try and ensure gender balance among reviewers. And then during, a proposal review, if there's a tie with the proposals, we usually apply we play the gender card. So it's usually a tiebreaker in the ranking. Then we have to look at how we're going to address the gaps in the maps. So what we do with the Scientific Advisory Committee in the agenda, we include discussions about countries in conflict, countries with limited laws regulating research, the language barrier issue, and also the basic issue that those doing well now, these are the research institutions that are always winning these grants. You know, they've done well in the past and therefore they have a competitive advantage. So how are we going to manage these? So additional steps taken to address these disparities. One of the things is that we require cross-collaboration between European and African partners. We've established the EDCTP regional networks of excellence. We organize grant writing workshops for the French and Portuguese speaking applicants. We've also launched calls that apply to underrepresented countries. And most recently, that's 2019, we held a joint workshop with Africa CDC, who we have an MOU with. And at this workshop, we had to try and drill down to why are we having all these disparities. So the discussions covered how, you know, we try to clarify the challenges underlying the regional and gender imbalances, and also try to identify strategies to improve both geographical and gender distribution of funding. Now, out of this workshop, a call was launched that is to address gender and diversity gaps in clinical research capacity, but is managed by the EDCTP Regional Networks of Excellence. So the UK Department of Health and Social Care provided EDCTP 3 million, and this was awarded to the Networks of Excellence to implement regional female PhD fellowship programs to support up to 32 African-based female PhD candidates. The requirement was that the students should come from underrepresented regions and should enroll female PhD students under their mentorship to start filling the capacity gaps. Now, in addition to that, each network is required to develop and refine a network policy on gender equality that will be implemented at each institution, and that will include data collection and monitoring of the effectiveness of the policy. Now, this is a map of the EDCTP Regional Networks of Excellence. CANTAM is implementing the WISE program, ESCCR has CAFC, WANETAM has Talent, and TESA has Tagendi. So the countries highlighted in red are the countries that these female PhD students are coming from. But you'll also notice that some of these countries can be deemed as underrepresented. And this is because they had, very little, a poor response to the call for applications. So most of the times they had to launch the calls twice or thrice so that applicants from these underrepresented countries could apply. And I'm glad to say that we have representation from countries such as Sierra Leone, South Sudan, Eswatini, Congo, and Burundi. Now, last week I was in Angola for the TESA General Assembly, and I was pleased to meet some of the Tagendi female PhD fellows. We have a fellow from Zimbabwe, we have a fellow from Botswana, and we have a fellow from Namibia. Now, in addition to that, TESA is also hosting fellows, the same as all the other networks of excellence, and these are PhD and master students. We have Ms. Mildred Pepukai, who was supported in TESA 2 for her master's, and now in TESA 3 is pursuing her PhD in data management and biostatistics. Then we have Dr. Agnes Manjoro, who's the only postdoc in the TESA consortium, and she happens to be a woman. And then we have Ms. Bareng, who in TESA 2 was an MSc student, but is now upgrading to a PhD in TESA 3. So what's the expected impact of these female PhD fellowships? We expect at the end of the day that they'll contribute to the training and development of female scientists in sub-Saharan Africa to become future research leaders to address geographical disparities in research capacity across sub-Saharan Africa. In my opinion, I think we're changing the tide, but then at the end of the day, we have to see this translate on the higher level because, again, men are sitting on top and we need to change that. Thank you.
Okay. And so the last talk for today.
Yes, so I said that the Global Health Network is actually the nucleus for networking to bring all the different networks together. So let Frank and Dennis come and tell us the strategy put in place. Over.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Dennis Sesanga from UVRI. Yes, so we'll be presenting about TGHN Africa, networks of excellence, and beyond, basically scaling excellence in the African region. Yeah, so I cannot speak about ESCCR, TGHN ESCCR without speaking about TGHN Africa. So basically, TGHN Africa is made up of the ESCCR, the CANTAM, the TESA, and ONETAM, all put together. And this hub aims to bring health research ability and activities of every healthcare setting in Africa. So basically sharing research information that's coming up from the various networks. So if I may speak about ESCCR, the ESCCR hub that's part of the TGHN, we basically share information from the various sites within the Eastern African region. So you may find that if there are events that's happening at UVRI, we do put them up, webinars, and these can easily be accessed by members from other sites. There could be research papers, information, upcoming, even protocols from different research work that's done, so that other members can learn about what's happening or even develop their works a lot easier. So you'll also be able to find toolkits for those of you who are developing tools, and let me say you would like to not start from scratch. There are a lot of resources on the ESCR platform on TGHN, and also key topics, because we usually currently we are running a topic about Ebola. Most of you may be wanting to find, let me say, what's happening in Uganda. We've been able to put a number of resources from the Ministry of Health and different partners that UVR is working with, WHO, and then you can easily be able to learn and not start from scratch. So ESCR TGHN as a hub, it has registered quite a lot of impact. We have over 3,040 members as of September 22nd, and we've had about 104 new users. You may find that all these users come from different places. As long as you subscribe and you choose to follow the information that's there, it's readily accessible. And we've also organized a number of webinars. Most of the webinars that are done are put there and for members to easily access them. Yeah, those are some of the impact numbers in regards to the users. Yeah, and then regarding our plans, we are currently finalizing with a training plan. So that information when you're organizing the webinars, it's not it's from the bottom up. So based on the needs from the various sites, well, we organize webinars, and we seek to have a lot of participation of the members. And then we plan to collaborate with other networks of excellence for webinars, especially for certain topics. We may find that a certain person has experience on a given topic in another network, be it CANTAM, be it ONETAM, so they could come through and present on a key topic that's of interest, and vice versa. So as a way of sharing research and information. We plan to collaborate with communications officers from other networks of excellence. So when you have an event that's of interest, let me say down in Eastern Africa, when you have webinars that we are organizing, for dissemination of those webinars and for participation of people from other networks, if we do share that information with other communication officers, it will be a lot easier for us to have participants from those other networks take part in our events and vice versa. And then also continuously uploading research publications. You may find that most of the work that we've actually on the platform, works that we've put up on the hub, we found that them just being on the websites, on our individual site websites, they were not registering a lot of numbers. But when you do put them up on the hub, you get to register visitors through the DOIs from other networks, and information is shared a lot more. So as a researcher, it's resourceful to have your work put up on the hub so that other people easily access it, because more people who are not necessarily from your site, let's say like if I'm from UVRI, get to read your work versus just keeping it on your UVRI site. So there are the 4 regional networks in Africa. I already mentioned them. There's ESCCR, there's CANTAM, as you may see right there, there's TESA and WANETAM. So some of the works that we upload on our ESCCR site, we get to cross-post it onto other networks. Like if I have an event, there's a way in which on the platform we can flag it to be seen by members who are subscribed to the TESA or even WANETAM. I may call in Frank, please.
Good afternoon. I'm the one standing between you and lunch. So I'll either be your friend or your biggest enemy. I try to be both. So right on this side, there's 5,500 plus. These are the communities behind the knowledge hubs from the networks of excellence. So for example, EACCR has members that are around 2,500. Most people don't understand, how does TJHN work? Or what is there? And they think it's just a platform. But I usually tell people it's just a mechanism. The platform you see is just a mechanism. It's the community behind TJHN that drives this work. Each one of you here might have contributed 1 or 2 things in the platform, but you didn't know, just like in this room, how you ended up coming in here to find other people sitting. All of these, in one way or another, are connected through this platform. So let's see the platform as a mechanism that gives us a sort of a portal to do this. I can give you an example. During the Ebola outbreak, it's still going on in Uganda, Dennis and I decided to create a resource to respond to Ebola. And this was not that we are going to create SOPs. We just scanned through the network to see what resources already exist for Ebola that could help the response in Uganda. We also tried to communicate the government documents that help with the response to Ebola, and it added those to the Knowledge Hub, and it cross-posted them to all the networks, the African Regional Hub, Africa CDC, as well as the Alert and Pandora. I don't know about Pandora, but Alert. So this is how the mechanism works. So you've heard what, thanks Trudie for jumping into the room. And we're very happy for the work you have done 12 years ago until now. We all know about what the research gap is. We actually, so some of us, probably this is our first experience being in an African country. This is South Africa. You have seen how we are struggling probably with the technology and all this. This is just the beginning. If you go to the field and collect data, where actually the research we are sitting here and saying this is where, this is what we are trying to develop, the conditions are so much worse. But in order to do that, we need to be able to create mechanisms to get there. So we started with one community, and now we have more than 60 communities. Oh, let's put some light. And in my presentation, we said networks of TJHN Africa, networks of excellence and beyond. What did we mean? So now in our 5-year strategic plan, working with all the partners, we have developed TJHN. Can we put on the lights, please? Because I want to say something. We have the Global Health Network Africa. I know you can see almost all of us. We have the Global Health Network Asia. Can we get the ends up? So these are the representatives from the Global Health Network Asia, the Global Health Network Latin America. So all what's happening today, all these people are learning what the networks of excellence are doing. And that's why Noshin was asking about how do you do this so that they can go do it in their communities in Bangladesh. you can also be able to learn what they're doing and translate it to your communities here. So we work closely with, actually, that's why thanks Elvis for being part of the team. So we work closely with Africa CDC to develop this. The aim is not to duplicate, the aim is to come together and to see how far can we be able to reach all the researchers who are in our settings. And that's why we're here for this conference as well. And finishing, for the Global Ethnic Africa, we are going to be working closely. You have heard about webinars and all that, but we are thinking of more support. So we'll have things we call the research clubs that we've started operating, data clinics, Pathfinder projects, policy labs, community engagement, grant writing, because we need to be able to pay for the research that we're doing. I will finish by saying, by all this work and working with all of you, TJHN worked with the partners to produce the essential curriculum for research. And from that essential curriculum, now we've been able to develop this postgraduate diploma in global health research. It's a virtual program, and we encourage people to register, and the applications are open now. So make sure you can check it, and it will teach you about all the different ends of research. And thank you. Sorry for running 1 minute longer.
Thank you so much. You are not the one standing between lunch and people and lunch. I'm the one. And I know there's a lot of questions. So many of you will walk out of here being my enemies because I won't have picked you. Pontiano is already lifted his hand. So let's say this will do, I think, maybe 3 questions on management, 3 questions on gender, and if there's maybe 1 or 2 on the platform, because the platform, you can actually access it and you can learn more. So let's start with Pontiano, and then I didn't get your name, Florence, and then Gloria, Pontiano, Gloria, and then there, and then we come to Thumbi. Pontiano.
Many times when we talk about gender equality and all that, we give numbers and we get discouraged. Oh, 20 women, 60 male. But I think that is a little bit misleading and it discourages us. So all the females are left behind. I think we need to look at the trends, yeah? And that will give us how successful we are. If there was 0 women 10 years ago, and now we have 20, that is a big achievement. So many times I tell the people who are presenting this, give us the trend. Don't give us only the numbers. You may feel we haven't done a lot, but actually we are very successful when you look at the trend. The other one is we may do things proactively that also makes a female inferior. I give you an example. At our university, Makerere University, what they have done for the last 15 years, for admission, they add a point to the female. Is that good for the female or bad? You say that for me to join the medical school, they have to add 1 point. Do you feel good as a female? Is it helping you, or it puts you a little bit again that for you need to be pushed? So we need to be careful. Then the other one I've seen in our countries, the boys are being endangered now because we are proactively pushing the female. The point 1 that is given to the female from very, very good schools, and they give them a point. A boy from a village down there working very hard is left behind. So we need to be very careful. We push for female, but we're also endangering the boys. Thank you.
Thank you. Mine is more of a comment to Michelle. So one of the things that is really lacking when it comes to the gender balance, for me, I see is the issue of mentorship. A lot of times we said that we don't have the needed mentorship to even apply for the grant. And sometimes self-doubt for us, the women, will feel that we don't have that. In the covenant, we have fear, or am I going to do better on that project? And one of the things I've learned over the years is taxing us. Sometimes you're writing a grant, say, okay, maybe Gloria, you should spearhead this grant, even though we all working as a team, but give a female a tax. Say, we know you may not have the capacity, but we're going to support you, but you're going to lead this consortium. I think once women are involved, and I think the sense of fear and self-doubt definitely going to go away over time. Thank you.
Thank you. I take from that note, and I want to first appreciate what you said, Michelle. I'm going to talk like on gender. Number one, we need to stop apologizing. That you did not need to do is to say, I'm going to make you guys sensitive. Men, if they oversell, women have been underselling. And I think every context, be it global South, global North, gender is still at the same position, 28% worldwide. So Africa is actually leading up, showing that we can do it in a better way. I am from global South, born and brought up, and I live in global North. I think we know the imbalance between the both. So I think the first thing, we all in this room, we are never going to apologize for being women and saying we're going to make you, because somewhere we are all together. I think men understand. We started in labor market much later than men, but I think we are very smart. We are doing it much better than they've done for centuries.
I think we should have just had a separate symposium on gender research. Trudie, next meeting, there should be one. Last question, unfortunately, and this will be completely biased, no conflict of interest. He was not my mentor, so.
Actually, unfortunately, my question is also for Michelle, but, and it has to do with the strategy that, if I understood it correctly, where you require that clinical trials must involve European and African partners as a strategy for addressing gender disparity. And I didn't quite understand how that does that, because our European colleagues are not very good examples on this issue. I think we are actually doing better in Africa in addressing gender disparities. So how does that address that?
So that was one of the solutions implemented to address geographical disparities, not gender.
But how does requiring European and African, why can't that be intra-African?
We also advocate for that, but also we can't really dismiss the North, because they also come with expertise that is required here. And sometimes when we look at the large consortia, it's more Northern heavy than Southern heavy. So we try and just make sure that.
Good. Unfortunately, we have to stop. Next time we'll start with the gender one. But just to say a really big thank you to the organizers and the really warm and enthusiastic participation of everybody.